On the other side, the council meeting ended, and as a titan of the organization, the archbishop only now stepped out of the venue. Under the escort of a group of temple knights, he slowly boarded the carriage. Lord Archbishop, Lord Archbishop. Just as the carriage was about to depart, loud shouts came from the side. Shwa shwa shwa. The sound of several swords being drawn rang out as the temple knights surrounded the person blocking the carriage. Archbishop Milton pulled back a slit in the carriage's curtain. He saw Grote standing outside with a face full of nervousness, trying his best to explain something to the temple knights blocking his path. "Let him up," Milton's voice came from inside the carriage. An attendant immediately ran over and led Grote forward. After a careful body search, Grote boarded the carriage. The archbishop's carriage was very spacious, and the interior decoration was exceptionally magnificent. In every corner, symbols and patterns related to the god of light could be seen. It was filled with faith and piety. Grote boarded the carriage with trepidation. He didn't speak, but instead knelt directly on the floor, his forehead pressed against the ground. He used this method to repent for the mistakes he had committed. The carriage began to move slowly, and a slight bumpiness could be felt. But Grote remained in that posture, not getting up. After a long time, Archbishop Milton took a sip from a water cup and spoke. "The evidence you gave me was fake?" Today's council had gone smoothly. The only thing that didn't go well for Milton was the failure to convict Lysis of its crimes. If Grote hadn't dropped the ball halfway, he wouldn't have been humiliated in public. It was real. Grote answered hurriedly. Milton pondered for a moment, golden light flickering on his body as he continued to ask, "Tell me about this matter." Given his status as an archbishop, he normally wouldn't bother with the affairs of a border city. The Church of Light had no interest in who became the city lord. The church focused on spreading faith. However, this year, a problem had arisen with the faith in Lysis. In other words, the temple within the city could no longer collect the power of faith for the god of light. This caused Lysis to enter the church's field of vision. Afterward, the church began some investigations. Coincidentally, Grote was also targeting Lysis. It was only natural that the evidence was delivered into the archbishop's hands. As long as this intelligence was real, even if such criminal evidence could be dug up from any city, with the archbishop's influence, he could pull Rebecca down from her position. Once a new city lord was installed, the temple's issue could be resolved. But such a simple matter had been botched by Grote. At the critical moment, he brought in 2 random guards to testify, causing things to go wrong. By now, Milton no longer trusted Grote. When questioning him, he had already used interrogation. Under the influence of the holy light, any living beings would speak their true thoughts. Grote remained kneeling on the ground, his heart becoming even more pious. He spoke softly. "The evidence is real. Last night, I arranged for people to bring 5 witnesses from Lysis through the north gate. They were all important officials of Lysis, enough to testify to Rebecca's crimes. But in the end, those 5 people, along with the people I arranged, all disappeared. That's why the error occurred at the council today." Milton listened, his brow furrowing slightly. "You mean Rebecca kidnapped the people in advance?" His tone was somewhat incredulous. The security in Silverwing City had always been good. Could someone who had only been in Silverwing City for a few days have the ability to make people vanish without a trace inside the city? Yes, it must be so. I suspect it's that Fang Hao. He has many tricks. Rebecca might not be able to pull it off, but he probably could. Grote continued. Milton frowned in silence. This wasn't the first time he had heard the name Fang Hao. Saint Suhaid had mentioned that Fang Hao possessed great strength. At the council, I used interrogation, but Rebecca didn't lie. How do you explain that? Milton continued to ask. According to him, Fang Hao had many strange abilities, but Rebecca didn't have much strength. At the scene, he had used the church's ability in front of everyone. Yet Rebecca said the evidence in his hands was fake. With the archbishop's power, let alone Rebecca, even high-level heroes could not lie under his power. How could this be explained? Grote hesitated for a moment and continued. I don't know, but the evidence I gave you is absolutely real. Even if I had the courage of the heavens, I wouldn't dare deceive you, Lord Archbishop. Milton fell into deep thought. In that case, was Rebecca wearing some kind of treasure at the time? He recalled what Rebecca was wearing then. Rebecca was a woman who loved beauty, and she was wearing a very form-fitting gown at the time. If she were wearing any items, they would have been found during the body search when entering the venue. Rebecca hadn't lied, and Grote wasn't lying now either. What exactly was going on? As the carriage continued forward, Grote's entire body began to go numb. His body was already weak, and maintaining a kneeling posture was naturally something he couldn't sustain. His body began to shake violently, even more than the vibration of the carriage. But Milton still didn't tell him to get up. By the time the carriage arrived at the church hall, Grote's body was shaking like a sieve, and his sweat had completely soaked the carpet. "Archbishop, we have arrived at the church." The attendant's voice came from outside. The archbishop glanced at the man prostrate at his feet. He said softly, "Go back and do your work. I will tell you what you should do in the next couple of days. I hope you won't disappoint me this time." After saying that, he got up and stepped out of the carriage. Grote, who had been kneeling all this time, instantly collapsed, lying on the floor unable to get up. The archbishop left. A temple knight looked at Grote, who was lying in the carriage like he was about to faint, drenched in sweat. He spoke, "Get out." Grote gritted his teeth and slowly crawled out. He stepped off the carriage. As the magnificent carriage left, Grote hailed a carriage on the street to take him back to his residence. Sitting in the carriage, the weak Grote actually revealed a smile. His clash with Rebecca this time had ended in failure again. But unlike before, he had dragged the archbishop into the fray and on his side. "Rebecca, you just wait." The late autumn sun was still bright, but no longer as scorching as before. Shining on the body, it gave a warm feeling. Fang Hao stood in the courtyard. He was assigning tasks for the next couple of days. They were returning to Li Sis in a few days, so supplies needed to be prepared in advance. Furthermore, he notified the 4 accompanying mercenary groups to start consolidating their teams. He didn't want anyone left behind. The convoy wouldn't change its schedule to wait for them. The 4 mercenary groups hadn't had any missions during this time. They weren't needed for patrols or guard duty, so they spent every day wandering around, drinking at the tavern, and looking for women. Since they were heading back, it would take a few days to properly round up all the members. After assigning the tasks, he let everyone go to prepare. Everyone dispersed. Fang Hao also planned to check on the horses. Coming to the courtyard, he saw Jia and Loli teasing a rather large parrot. The parrot's feathers were multicolored. It had a red beak and a red crest on its head. It looked quite majestic. The parrot just sat on the table without any leash, neither flying away nor running. It just waited for the 2 girls to feed it dried fruits. "What's this thing?" Fang Hao asked as he approached, and Jia and the other turned back at the sound, and seeing it was Fang Hao, they smiled. "A parrot? Haven't you seen one before?" I know it's a parrot. I mean, where did you get it? It's huge." "Up close, this parrot was quite big. It was even a size larger than a regular pigeon. I bought it in Chinatown today. An old man sold it to me, saying that with a couple of days of training, it'll be able to talk," and Jia said happily. Earlier, seeing that guard captain with a talking parrot, and Jia was full of envy, and sure enough, she had bought one back. "It can't talk yet. Can we teach it?" Fang Hao said, reaching out to pet the parrot. The parrot dodged a couple of steps, then extended its left wing and blocked Fang Hao's reaching hand. This stunned Fang Hao. It seemed quite smart. He tried to pet it with his other hand. The parrot used its right wing to push it away directly. "Here, take this," and Jia handed over the dried fruits in her hand. The dried fruits were some roasted grains mixed with some dried fruit pieces. It looked like specially bought pet food. Fang Hao took a grain and fed it into the parrot's mouth. This time when he went to pet it, the parrot didn't use its wings to resist anymore. Fang Hao finally got to pet the parrot as he wished. The parrot was fluffy, but its body inside was a size smaller than its appearance suggested. It just had very thick feathers. "Gee!" The parrot let out a cry, signaling that Fang Hao could pet it, but not to forget to feed it. Quite smart. What can it say now? In a few moves, Fang Hao fed it all the dried fruits in his hand. "We're still teaching it, soon," and Jia said. Fang Hao thought it made sense. This parrot was quite spiritual, so it shouldn't be hard to teach something so smart. After all, they had seen that guard captain's parrot, which could talk. "What's its name?" Fang Hao continued to ask, and Jia and Loli both fell into deep thought. It seemed they hadn't thought of one yet. Skull Crusher or Fireblade? Which one sounds better? And Jia asked. Loli thought for a moment. Fireblade. Since its crest is red, it's kind of similar. Hearing their conversation, Fang Hao immediately interrupted. "Can't you two think of any other names? You have to use our own people's names. You think Fireblade doesn't sound good? It's not about whether it sounds good or not. Using someone else's name for a pet is a bit inappropriate, isn't it? In the future when you see Fireblade and shout the name, both of them will look at you. You have a point. Then you pick one." "I can't think of one either." Fang Hao shook his head. "Then I'll go find Rebecca and have her think of one." And Jia stood up and gave a signal, and the parrot flapped its wings and flew directly onto her shoulder. The two girls and the bird walked toward Rebecca's room. After Njia left, Fang Hao continued toward the stables in the back. Their residence was very large, and there were many horses. Many soldiers were responsible for taking care of them. As he approached, he saw a Sidi, who was also checking the condition of the horses. The two of them had the same idea. "My lord," a Sidi saluted. We'll probably leave the day after tomorrow. No problems with the horses, right?" Fang Hao reached out and stroked the neck of a four-legged giant lizard nearby. The giant lizard tilted its head up, looking quite silly. "I just checked. There are no problems with the horses," a Sidi said. Make sure all the fodder needed for the return trip is prepared." "Understood. The count is being finalized." After dinner, after settling everything, Fang Hao returned to his room, and Jia, Loli, and the others were all in Rebecca's room, saying they wanted to give the parrot a more domineering name. Fang Hao lay on the bed, opening the Lord's book to kill time. His eyes were on the chat channel, but his mind was pondering the Church of Light's attitude toward his side. Clearly, the Archbishop had noticed the changes in Li Sis. Otherwise, given Grote's status, it wouldn't be enough to have the Archbishop help him with these things. The most likely possibility was that the Church wanted a change of leadership in Li Sis. Fortunately, they had prepared thoroughly this time and given the light feather to Rebecca before the council. Otherwise, the consequences would be truly unimaginable. Things should be stable for a while during the winter, and any further actions from the Church would wait until winter ended. They could use this time to make preparations in advance. As his mind wandered, the moon gradually rose above the treetops. The nightstone began to emit a hazy glow as darkness fell. Jia, at that moment, the bedroom door was gently pushed open. Looking toward the sound, he saw a graceful, somewhat hesitant figure standing at the wooden door. Rebecca. Rebecca was wearing a loose, grayish-blue long dress, her hand resting on the wooden door, standing there quietly. Like a still statue, she didn't move an inch. Fair cheeks, eyes like autumn water, plump, bright red lips. She had clearly made a special effort to dress up before coming out. The loose long dress outlined the perfect curves of her shoulders and hips, and her ankles beneath the hem were slender and fair. Standing there before the door, her eyes showed a slight hesitation, as if she didn't know whether it was better to leave or enter the room. Rebecca's appearance caused everything Fang Hao had just been thinking about to vanish instantly. He closed the Lord's book in his hand. He immediately walked over, took her hand, and led her into the room. As Rebecca was pulled into the room, her face turned several shades redder. Even her neck turned bright red. The two of them sat by the bed, their hands still joined. "Weren't Jia and the others with you?" Naming the parrot, Fang Hao asked curiously. Rebecca's willow leaf brows furrowed slightly. "You mean you don't want me to come?" Her tone carried a hint of bashful annoyance. No. Rebecca's beautiful face put on a mock-serious expression as she said softly, "I gave them a few names, and they went back to their rooms to choose. Also, Njia said she'd be staying at Loli's place tonight." Oh, that's good." Hearing, "That's good," Rebecca's face turned even redder, and she gave his shoulder a hard punch. Then, as if throwing caution to the wind, she simply flopped onto the bed. "Come on." Holy crap. The doors and windows were tightly shut, and the lights were bright. Rebecca lay neatly on the bed, her hands folded over her waist, giving off a feeling of serenity. The beige long dress draped perfectly, and her reclining posture made her figure rise and fall gracefully. Her high bosom was like an insurmountable mountain, astonishing to behold. Her bright, pretty face was slightly flushed. Her eyes were tightly shut, and her eyelashes trembled slightly. She was clearly nervous, yet she still pretended to be calm and composed. Fang Hao found it somewhat amusing. He bent down and took off the shoes on her feet. Rebecca, who was still planning to continue playing dead, felt someone grasp her foot. Her body instantly stiffened, and she suddenly sat up. "What's wrong?" Fang Hao asked softly, seeing her look slightly annoyed. Rebecca originally wanted to scold him for touching her feet, but when she saw Fang Hao merely placing her shoes aside, she immediately didn't know what to say again. With a thud, she flopped back onto the bed, continued playing dead with her eyes closed, and tucked her pale, tender feet inward. Seeing how cute she was, Fang Hao lay down beside her. He lay on his side, quietly watching her. The room was completely silent, so quiet that their mutual breathing was clearly audible. Rebecca was already quite old and was a top-ranking noble in the city. She was aware of matters between men and women, but due to her own orientation, She had never personally experienced them. The only person she had been intimate with was another woman. Being with a man, this was the first time. Holding great power for many years, she was constantly reminded to remain composed no matter what she encountered. She was old enough to be his mother. She absolutely couldn't show too much nervousness or lose face. She continued having these random thoughts, waiting for him to eagerly pounce on her. At that point, she could scold him a little, making it clear that even though they shared this relationship, they shouldn't overthink it. As long as they liked each other, it shouldn't affect their respective work. She planned well in her mind, but after waiting for a long time, there was no further action. Only the occasional warm breath exhaled by the man near her ear, tickling her face. What was wrong with him? The lack of movement felt as agonizing as waiting for someone to present evidence against her during the council meeting in the daytime. She really couldn't figure out what Fang Hao was doing. She opened her eyes slightly, peeking to the side. She saw Fang Hao lying on his side, smiling as he looked at her. Rebecca was stunned, her eyes full of confusion. She turned her face to look back at him. The two were close enough to feel each other's breath. Fang Hao, yes. Rebecca's eyes were strange. Did you finish? Finish what? You're insulting me. Fang Hao retorted. Rebecca lay back down again and said, if you're going to be like this, then I'm going back. Having said that, she tried to get up. Seeing that she was about to get angry, Fang Hao immediately yielded and embraced the voluptuous beauty from the side. He raised his arm and circled her waist, pulling her boneless, ample figure tightly into his embrace. Rebecca gasped, her body instantly tense. She forced herself to remain calm, but her face was flushed crimson, almost dripping blood. Fang Hao's heart was also racing. He, too, yearned for Rebecca's beauty. Holding Rebecca close to his chest, he whispered, Rebecca, you are truly beautiful today. Rebecca was delighted inside, but her expression remained serious. Feeling the man's body heat, she pretended to be stern and said, don't blame me for not staying with you if Njia comes back later. Fang Hao thought about it. Njia could run back at any time. Thinking about it that way, why did it feel even more exciting? Embracing the warm, soft beauty, he pulled the thin blanket over both of them. Do you remember the first time we met? You were sitting up high, and I was on the ground floor looking up at you. Tui, Rebecca spat, saying, you were pretending to be a Platonist then. I haven't settled that score yet. You even helped me change clothes back then. I wish I could cut you. Platonism refers to a view of love. It means the pursuit of pure love on a spiritual and ideal level, not just physical pleasure. At that time, in order for Fang Hao to secure the order for Rebecca's dress, as soon as he arrived in Li Sis City, he was pinching his fingers like a woman, twisting his waist until it almost broke. There were rewards, too. Besides signing the order, he was also able to openly view Rebecca's body at that time. Rebecca was speaking, but by the end of her sentence, her breathing suddenly became heavy. Fang Hao paused his restless hand under the quilt and deliberately asked, what's wrong? Why is your breathing so heavy? Rebecca's red lips parted, but no words came out. Fang Hao's hand began moving again. He lifted her collar and discovered that today she was wearing the belly wrap he had given her. The silk material was excellent, feeling smooth and soft. He continued, no matter what you think, I like you. Maybe it was our interactions, or maybe it was the first time I took your measurements. But in short, you are mine now. You don't have to bear everything alone anymore. You have me. Rebecca bit her lower lip and whispered, I'd be crazy to believe you. Fang Hao continued to ask, and you? When did you fall for me? Rebecca's body stiffened, her breathing growing increasingly rapid. Her red lips opened and closed. I don't know. I didn't notice. Maybe when Rayleigh died. Or maybe when you saved me from Aubrey. Fang Hao's eyes were full of smiles. He was equally happy that Rebecca admitted to liking him. He half closed his eyes, watching the woman in front of him whose face was getting redder and whose body was squirming more and more. Her breathing also started to become rapid. He used his other hand to cup her chin, leaned in, and kissed her. Woo! Rebecca's eyes were glazed over. Her small fists lightly beat the shoulder of the man pressing down on her, and she stopped resisting. The personal maid stood guard outside the door, carrying out the task assigned by the madam. Suddenly, a slightly clearer gasp rang out inside the room. Knock, knock, knock. A knocking sound came from outside the door. The sky was slightly bright now. The sun had not yet risen. Rebecca groggily opened her eyes, looking at the grayish-white wall with a confused expression. Who am I? Where's this? After a moment of confusion, A sensation of soreness and numbness immediately rushed into her mind. "Madam, it's almost dawn," the maid's voice came through. This was what Rebecca had personally instructed the night before, so that she could leave before everyone woke up, trying her best to maintain her last bit of dignity. She moved slightly, only to find her head resting on the man's chest and her thigh draped over his waist. She was tightly encircled by an arm, making it impossible to get up. I know," Rebecca whispered immediately, not daring to hesitate. Hearing the reply from inside the room, the maid stopped speaking but continued to guard the door outside. Rebecca moved the arm wrapped around her and tried to prop herself up. A wave of soreness hit her entire body again, causing her to fall back down. Their clothes were scattered all over the floor, a complete mess, as if a thief had broken in. "Fang Hao, stop pretending to be asleep." Rebecca raised her fist and hit his abdomen. Uffed. The pretending Fang Hao nearly spat out something and immediately opened his eyes. Seeing the beauty's slight anger, Fang Hao immediately sat up, helped the uncomfortable Rebecca sit up, and softly asked, "Why don't you sleep a little longer? Are you feeling unwell anywhere?" "How dare you say that?" Rebecca's eyes narrowed slightly. Looking at the grinning Fang Hao, her anger flared up. She had been thoroughly tormented last night. Fang Hao held her in his arms and whispered, "Sleep a little longer. We don't have much planned for today anyway. You must be exhausted from last night." Recalling the events of last night, Rebecca felt her entire body go numb. She twisted his waist fiercely and said harshly, "I told you clearly, but you wouldn't listen and insisted on messing around." Fang Hao was pinched, but it didn't hurt. He whispered, "No, I was just too excited last night and couldn't control myself." "Humph." Rebecca snorted, released her hand, and began to put on her clothes, enduring the soreness in her body. Fang Hao looked at her voluptuous body, swallowed, moved closer, gently pulled her, and said, "It's still early. Why don't we rest a bit more?" Rebecca's body stiffened. She immediately used the thin blanket to cover herself with alertness and moved to one side, trying her best to put distance between them. "Rest? What rest? Put your clothes on. Everyone will be up soon." Rebecca casually tossed his clothes over to him. Fang Hao didn't try to stop her further. Looking at Rebecca's condition, she genuinely didn't seem well. She was walking somewhat gingerly. After Rebecca finished adjusting her dress, she opened the door and left with her maid. Only then did Fang Hao realize that there was someone guarding the door outside. He figured the person must have worked hard. After Rebecca left, Fang Hao began tidying up the room. Although servants usually cleaned, the state of the room today was truly embarrassing. The tidy room was a complete mess. Things on the table had been swept onto the floor, and the stool was kicked over to the side. The quilt on the bed was soaked over a large area, still showing wet marks. Fang Hao put the items on the table back in their original places. He directly put the heavily stained quilt into his storage space. That saved him trouble. He could just throw it away somewhere private later. The sun rose. The sky was fully bright. And Jia, who had spent the night at Loli's place, pushed the door open with a bang and walked back in, yawning. The red-crested parrot was perched on her shoulder. As soon as she entered, she said, "Are we going out soon? What are we eating this morning?" "Huh, what is that smell?" Beastman's senses are sharper than humans. She sniffed the air, looking like a police dog. Fang Hao opened the window and immediately changed the subject. "Did you name the parrot?" When the topic she was interested in came up, she immediately said, "I've decided. It's called Red General." "Right, Red General?" The red parrot nodded cooperatively. "It knows that's its name?" Fang Hao looked even more surprised. "Of course." And Jia's face was full of pride. She commanded, "Red General, show him a trick." Red General landed directly on the table. It stood on one leg, spread its wings, and performed the posture of a rock spreading its wings. "Gotta say, it's really smart. Impressive, right? It's very clever." And Jia was overjoyed and took out a dried fruit to feed the parrot. After Red General finished eating, it flew back onto Njia's shoulder. "Can it talk yet?" Not yet. It just hasn't learned how to speak, no matter how much I teach it." And Jia said helplessly. Fang Hao thought for a moment and said, "I heard that if you want a parrot to talk, you might have to cut a piece of its tongue off." Flap, flap, flap. Red General on her shoulder seemed startled, flapping its wings and hiding behind Njia. It looked at Fang Hao with alertness, as if this person was truly going to cut its tongue. I was just kidding. Don't be scared," Fang Hao said immediately, seeing its reaction. Red General remained wary, not daring to approach Fang Hao. After breakfast, Rebecca, who had originally planned to catch up on sleep, received another notice from the Hall of Justice. An emergency council meeting was scheduled to be held in the council hall an hour later. This forced the sore Rebecca to wash and dress again, hastily boarding a carriage and heading to the council hall. After Rebecca left, Fang Hao also gathered his forces and departed from his residence. They exited the city through the east gate and headed towards Li Rong's territory. Sitting on the four-legged giant lizard, and Jia teased Red General and asked, "Do you trust Li Rong that much? Aren't you afraid she'll reveal your affairs to Silverwing City?" According to the plan, today, Fang Hao was going to use Li Rong's city as a coordinate point. To teleport Nielsen over, he needed to finish dealing with the Golden Queen before leaving Silverwing City. Before, he might have worried that Li Rong would reveal the matter of the undead, but after interacting with Saintly Mousy, he dismissed this concern. Transmigrators need to provide concrete evidence when making claims. Not only could Li Rong not gain the church's trust with her identity, but even if someone believed her words, she couldn't produce concrete evidence. Simply saying, "I saw it," holds no persuasive power. Moreover, if Li Rong spoke out, it would bring her no benefit. Silverwing City still wouldn't accept her, and she would also offend Fang Hao. She is a smart person, smarter than most transmigrators at least, and she wouldn't do such a foolish thing. Sitting on the giant lizard's back, Fang Hao turned his head and said, "Don't worry, Li Rong is smart. She knows which side to stand on and won't do anything foolish." And Jia also nodded. I always feel like she's calculating something in her head. Once we deal with the matters of the underground palace, we'll go back and hibernate for the winter," Fang Hao continued. The greatest secret of the entire underground palace probably lies on its final level. Regardless of whether the Golden Queen recorded in the murals is inside or not, he must go in and take a look today. All right, it's a shame about her shop, though. It was quite good, but it was ruined by fire. The group proceeded quickly. Soon, they arrived at Li Rong's city. They had contacted Li Rong in advance before setting off. From a distance, they saw Li Rong standing by the entrance, holding a cigarette and waiting. "You're up so early. Have you eaten breakfast?" Li Rong said, leading the group inside. Fang Hao and the others rode four-legged giant lizards and purple scale horses. Since they didn't need to accommodate others, their speed was naturally fast. Judging by her appearance, Li Rong had just woken up. "We've eaten. Let's go to your lord's manor and make sure others don't come near," Fang Hao said, dismounting the giant lizard. Li Rong exhaled a puff of smoke. "Everything is arranged. Just try not to tear down my house." The group walked quickly and entered the lord's manor directly. After instructing the Lionheart Knights to surround the area, Fang Hao didn't hesitate either. He immediately released the demon puppet and activated demon teleportation. The teleportation gate connected the two cities. Before Fang Hao could step through, he saw Scholar Nielsen, who had been waiting, emerge, leading 12 funeral priests carrying various instruments and medicines. It turned out that once the teleportation array was connected, he didn't need to go over to pick people up. The other party could come through the teleportation light curtain on the other end. Meanwhile, Li Rong froze in astonishment when she saw 13 skeletons dressed in highly religious attire walk out. She momentarily forgot to exhale the cigarette smoke she had inhaled, causing her to cough violently. She kept hitting her chest. Her reaction drew the attention of Nielsen and the others. They glanced sideways at Li Rong, their faint blue soul fire seeming capable of discerning emotion. Li Rong happened to meet the gaze of the soul fire. Her face turned pale with fright, and her coughing subsided significantly. "My lord," Nielsen led the bow. Fang Hao smiled. "Scholar Nielsen, I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you again next." "It is our duty." Fang Hao nodded and said, "Prepare a carriage for the scholar." "Yes." Once everyone was ready, the group set off again, galloping towards the underground palace. Taking this road for the second time, he was much more familiar with it. They spurred their horses on, making much better time than the last trip. The only special situation that arose was when the team was stopped by a patrol from Silverwing City midway through their journey. Fang Hao and the others immediately grew tense, nearly coming to blows. Fortunately, Nielsen and the group of funeral priests were inside the carriage and did not show their faces. Perhaps thinking the carriage was carrying women, the patrol did not conduct an inspection. After checking Fang Hao and the others' identification and inquiring about their purpose for being out, the patrol let them through. Everyone wiped away a bead of sweat as they left. They set off again, continuing toward the underground palace. Silverwing City. The council hall. The sudden addition of a council meeting left all the representatives somewhat bewildered. Some counselors who had finished their business early were already about to leave by carriage. They were intercepted by cavalry on the way and notified to attend the meeting. People discussed their guesses in low voices, wondering what could have happened to warrant such a frantic summons for everyone. Rebecca sat in her seat. Her heart immediately began to pound with anxiety. She had left in such a hurry this morning that she forgot to take the light feather from Fang Hao. If the Archbishop still hadn't given up and held on to the evidence of Li Sis City's crimes, using that interrogation ability again, what would she do? She glanced toward the door, considering whether to leave now and skip the meeting. She could find an excuse to explain it later. Although there were guards stationed there, the security wasn't tight. She should be able to leave. Just as her mind was racing with these thoughts, the 5 giants hurriedly walked out from the upper seats. Once the 5 leaders took their seats above, the entire hall instantly fell silent. Everyone looked toward the front in unison. Rebecca's hands were tightly clenched together, her knuckles white from the strain. Before long, Doherty of the Hall of Justice spoke in a low voice. Yesterday, we received word from the dwarves of Grey Iron City. Boffing Mountain has come under attack by an undead army. They hope the Federation will lend them a helping hand. Whoosh! The news immediately caused a stir throughout the hall. Humans and dwarves had not had close relations since their last joint campaign against the Huiwa Highlands. In fact, due to border and resource issues, their relationship had been far from harmonious. At a time like this, the dwarves actually had the nerve to ask humans for help. All the counselors below were discussing this with those beside them. Rebecca's hands, which had been clenched so hard they were bloodless, slowly relaxed. She leaned back against her chair, her whole body relaxing. So it wasn't about her. It was the dwarves being attacked by the undead. Dwarves? Undead? A second later, Rebecca's just relaxed brow furrowed again. It couldn't be Fang Hao, could it? Just a couple of days ago, he had mentioned the dwarves in his territory to her. Besides, where else would such a massive undead army come from? It must be Fang Hao. Leader Doherty, Boffing Mountain is dwarven territory. There have been frequent border conflicts with the human race in recent years. I believe we should carefully consider the matter of reinforcement. A counselor stood up and said loudly, since Rune ascended the throne, the dwarves have been in chaos, even harassing villages and towns under my city's jurisdiction multiple times. I have concrete evidence of this right here. Now that they're in trouble, they want us to provide men and money to support them? On what grounds? Another middle-aged man stood up, slamming a thick stack of documents onto the table, his face full of anger. This man's city shared a border with the dwarves. Right now, he couldn't wait to see the dwarves suffer and wished he could hold a banquet to celebrate. And they wanted him to send troops for support? In their dreams. 2 people in a row bringing up the dwarves' recent behavior drew agreement from other counselors. Normally, they didn't have much contact with the dwarves, but they had heard enough. The dwarves usually came to human lands to cause trouble, and now that they were in difficulty, they still wanted help? Where was their shame? They were utterly shameless. For a time, many people voiced their opposition to sending troops. The scene instantly became a chaotic mess. Bang, bang, bang. Doherty slammed the table hard, signaling everyone to quiet down. The room fell silent again. Archbishop Milton stood up at this moment. He spoke. The undead are the enemies of all living beings. For such a large-scale undead force to appear this time, something must have gone wrong at the barren battlefield. He paused slightly, his gaze scanning everyone. Humans and dwarves fought together against the undead and the Blood Clan. They have always been allies. In this matter of the undead, it is only right for humans to lend a hand. Clap, clap, clap. After Archbishop Milton finished speaking, a few people below started clapping. These people were deeply connected to the church. They were counselors belonging to the church faction. Regardless of whether Milton's words made sense, these people would support and uphold them. However, the majority remained silent. No one objecting did not mean they agreed. If the various factions were unwilling to send troops, the church alone could not sustain a racial war. Milton's expression was a bit unsightly. The church's prestige was declining at a visible rate. Seeing the situation was a bit awkward, Doherty spoke up. Bishop Milton, please take your seat. Then, Doherty's gaze fell back on the crowd below, and he said, the 100 Cities Federation was established to resist foreign races and carve out a stable, living environment for humanity. The message from the dwarves says the number of undead is vast. They captured 5 dwarven fortresses in a single day. Everyone was stunned. 5 fortresses in one day. This speed was simply inconceivable. Dwarven machinery was world famous, but the fortresses and strongholds they built were equally renowned for their sturdiness. How could they be broken so quickly? Doherty listened to the discussions below and, after they subsided a bit, continued. You should all understand the principle of when the lips are gone, the teeth are cold. We are supporting the dwarves now to end this war on dwarven territory, so it doesn't spread to our own lands. As soon as these words were spoken, even the city lord who had just produced the stack of dwarven crimes felt they made sense. If the undead were so numerous, once they overran the dwarves, their next step would be to attack human cities. In that case, it was indeed better to fight the war in dwarven territory. Although they understood the logic, they were still a bit reluctant to send aid just like that. Someone raised their hand. After Doherty nodded, the person stood and said, If we agree to help so easily, I'm afraid we won't even get the dwarves' gratitude afterward. Doherty naturally understood this point. He said loudly, Naturally, we won't aid them for nothing. Back when the dwarves aided humans, they also took a large amount of resources. This time, it's our turn, and they will likewise have to pay a price. The counselors below nodded one after another. Keeping the battlefield in dwarven territory while taking the opportunity to squeeze the dwarves for a profit was considered a fair deal. Seeing that the matter was mostly settled, Doherty spoke again. All right, everyone, let's vote. In fact, the matter of aiding the dwarves had already been carefully discussed by the 5 giants of the upper council. Bringing it up at the council today was actually just a notification. First, the church stepped forward to get the faithful counselors to agree, and then Doherty persuaded the others. There was a brief discussion below as people began to state their positions. Rebecca watched silently the whole time, neither stating a position nor discussing it with others. Her suspicion grew that the undead army was Fang Hao's forces. If humans sent aid to the dwarves, combined with the damage the Church of Light could deal to the undead, would this affect the course of the battle? And would it affect Fang Hao's development? She had only been to Fang Hao City once and didn't have a clear understanding of his territory's strength. She couldn't help but overthink things. All right, 132 votes in favor, 12 against, and 22 abstentions, a staff member nearby announced loudly. Rebecca snapped back to her senses. Looking forward again, she realized the voting had ended, and she had effectively abstained. Fortunately, many people had abstained, so she didn't attract anyone's attention. Good. Next is the matter of deploying troops. Time is of the essence. The Hall of Justice and the Church will deploy 20,000 troops in advance to aid the dwarves. The other cities will report the number of troops they can mobilize. Doherty continued. If they waited for the armies of all the cities to assemble, they probably wouldn't even reach Boffing Mountain by next spring. Therefore, the Hall of Justice and the Church would dispatch personnel ahead of time to aid the dwarves, while the armies of other cities would follow up with support according to the plan. Hearing Doherty's words, Rebecca's tense heart suddenly relaxed again. 20,000 men. You really don't know how many people Fang Hao has, do you? 20,000 men would barely be a snack for him. Rebecca, what are you laughing at? A counselor beside her asked curiously. For some reason, the woman beside him had suddenly curled her lips into a smile. Oh, it's nothing. I just suddenly thought of something happy. Rebecca suppressed her smile. The counselor didn't say more, only shaking his head slightly. Women, with such a major event happening, she still had the mind to think about other things. This was the only matter discussed at the meeting. The Archbishop and Grote did not take the opportunity to cause trouble for Rebecca either. After the meeting ended, Rebecca got back into her carriage and returned to her residence. She thought to herself, she should leave Silverwing City as soon as possible to avoid any further complications. The next day, after traveling at full speed, on the morning of the second day, Fang Hao and his group finally arrived at the pond. After driving away the wild beasts drinking water nearby, Fang Hao opened the Lord's book and established a temporary camp. Once everything was ready, Fang Hao directly released the demon puppet. He said to Nielsen and the others waiting nearby, Scholar, you guys wait on the shore for a bit. After I confirm there's no danger, you can come in. If there's danger, we'll retreat. Nielsen nodded slightly. Very well, my lord. After giving his instructions, Fang Hao controlled the demon puppet and dove headfirst into the pond. Heading all the way down, he soon reached the entrance to the underground palace again. Taking off the nightstone from his neck, he passed through the stone cave and entered the underground palace. Since Fang Hao and the others had cleared it before, he didn't see a single enemy or monster on the way up. He went straight to the 9th floor. In the corridor, The vibrant murals had already dimmed and discolored, with the paint peeling and falling off in some places. It had only been a few days, yet it had already turned into this state. He went straight to the stone door. Following the method Loli had told him, he gently pried at a stone brick. Click! After the crisp sound, the entire corridor began to shake, and the stone door slowly opened to both sides, revealing the situation inside. This was a separate room. The room was about 50 or 60 square meters, fully equipped with various utensils, tables, and chairs. However, the furniture was made of stone, while the utensils were all gold. In the center of the room was a massive golden coffin. The golden coffin was covered in ornate decorations and was exceptionally beautiful. Fang Hao stood at the door and waited for a while. The room was silent, and no enemies appeared. Is the Golden Queen not at home? It wasn't the first time he'd encountered a situation where the owner wasn't home. The owner was out, and he had treated their residence like a dungeon to be raided, carrying away all the items inside. After confirming there were no enemies in the room, Fang Hao walked in. The entire room was piled with utensils, so the possibility of hidden traps was low. But Fang Hao still tried to be as careful as possible. Having entered the room, he looked around, and his gaze finally fell on the massive golden coffin in the middle. The outside of the coffin was carved with various complex and exquisite patterns. The vibrant colors on the patterns were all made of various precious gems inlaid into the coffin. One of them, Fang Hao compared it, was actually the size of a fist. Not to mention whether this kind of gem belonged to special materials. Even if it were just an ordinary gem, it would already be worth a fortune. Truly extravagant. If there was any danger in this secret room, it could only be the closed golden coffin before him. But the possibility of an enemy being inside was low. Based on past experience, if there really were an enemy lying inside, by the time he stepped into this room, the person sleeping inside would have already awakened. Thinking of this, Fang Hao didn't know whether he should be glad to have avoided a major battle or regretful for missing the chance to encounter a powerful hero. But these were not things he could change. Placing both hands on one side of the coffin lid, he applied a little pressure. Creak! The sound of metal grinding against metal rang out as the coffin was pushed open bit by bit. As the lid opened, Fang Hao's eyes fell upon the contents within. The first thing that caught his eye was a pair of dried-up feet. Thump! 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 Fang Hao instantly let go and scrambled back several steps. She's home. She is home. The soul fire in the demon puppet's eye sockets flickered violently as he stared intently at the golden coffin, which had been pushed open a small fraction. Yet, no special situation occurred within. Everything was silent. Wait, that's not right. Could she have died in her sleep? There was no such thing as dying in one's sleep for the undead. A heavy sleeper? Or was she also using an ability similar to divine descent, and thus unaware that someone was approaching? Regardless, the feat that had just appeared had given him quite a fright. This was one of the few times he had been so scared since joining the undead faction. After waiting for a good while, and seeing no movement from the golden coffin, Fang Hao grew bold enough to approach again. Peering through the gap he had pushed open, the pair of dried-up feet from before had vanished. As if they had weathered away, they had crumbled into a pile of black powder. Dead. The undead also have a concept of death. Furthermore, after an undead dies, their body cannot be converted. Could it be that this golden queen just died like that? When he opened the coffin, he saw that the feet were still intact, but after he stepped back and returned, they had turned into this state. Speculating in his heart, he continued to exert force. Accompanied by a piercing grinding sound, the coffin lid was pushed open bit by bit, and as it opened wider and wider, the body within the coffin was also weathering and crumbling bit by bit. It was as if this golden coffin was a container, and for the parts of the container that were opened, the body would be unable to withstand the ravages of time, eventually crumbling into a pile of fly ash. Clang! When the coffin lid reached the last section, it tipped backward on its own. The entire scene inside the coffin appeared before his eyes. The weathered body had stopped at the chest cavity. Only half a chest cavity and a shriveled head remained. The hollow pupils were already shriveled and withered. She hadn't entered a zombie state, nor did any soul fire appear. Fang Hao approached a few steps closer again. Gold-eating queen, Amanda, rank 6 dark gold hero. She's not dead. Fang Hao, who had just approached, retreated a few steps again, creating distance from the coffin. A transmigrator's ability would not take effect on a dead corpse. This dark gold hero before him, who looked to be in poor condition, was not dead. But, looking at her state, she wasn't far from death either. Fang Hao stood to the side and waited for a while. Nothing unusual happened in the golden coffin. The queen, with only her chest and head remaining, still lay there quietly. Nearby, he found a metal staff with no attributes and lightly poked the shriveled body. Nothing happened, but where the golden scepter touched, another large piece crumbled away. It seemed the remaining parts wouldn't last much longer either. After confirming there was no immediate danger, seeing the demon puppet stay here, his main consciousness returned to his original body. He walked directly out of the room. Outside the door, Nielsen, Dimitrika, and several other heroes were all waiting silently. Seeing him come out, they quickly walked over. "My lord, how is the situation?" Nielsen asked. Fang Hao thought for a moment and said, "On the last floor, there's a corpse-nourishing coffin made of gold. Inside is a body with only the head and chest remaining. It's that golden queen, but her condition seems quite poor." Fang Hao gave a rough explanation of the matter. In fact, this underground palace was basically empty now, so there was nothing much to worry about. Nielsen thought for a moment and said, "Stay here, my lord. I will take some men down to take a look." "All right, I'll have the giant lizard take you there." After giving a few instructions to the four-legged giant lizard, it carried Nielsen and a group of funeral priests. They were sent into the underground palace beneath the pond. On the 9th floor, the demon puppet controlled by Fang Hao saw Nielsen arrive. Nielsen led the funeral priests, first bowing slightly toward the golden coffin. Only then did he step forward to carefully examine the situation. After seriously checking the state of the corpse in the coffin, he returned to the doorway. He said softly, "My lord, this golden queen's body has been heavily damaged. To restore her body, we need some materials to perform a ritual. Is the material consumption large?" Fang Hao thought and asked. He had to weigh whether it was worth it, and whether she would serve him after waking up. He wasn't some loyal devotee of the undead. He wouldn't bankrupt himself to save this gold-eating queen. Moreover, the title gold-eating was truly a bit special. She wouldn't happen to like eating gold, would she? Nielsen thought for a moment and said, "We need over 100 shadow stones, traces of death, and alchemy materials. We can also substitute them by slaughtering living beings, but that would require a larger number of people. That many. To construct special buildings for the undead faction only took a few, at most 10 or 20 shadow stones. Restoring the body in this golden coffin required 100 shadow stones plus traces of death. Would it really need that much energy? He could actually afford these things. But what if she turned against him after her body was restored? Lorana was a precedent. He had resurrected her, yet he still had to coddle her, and her loyalty increased incredibly slowly. After thinking it over, Fang Hao asked, "Can you make her wake up first so I can talk with her?" Before spending a large amount of materials on restoration, he wanted to communicate with her first. "It's possible, but it won't last long," Nielsen replied. There's no danger in her waking up, right? We can make it so only her consciousness is able to communicate," Nielsen continued. "Good, then let her wake up first." "Very well, my lord." Nielsen returned to the room and organized 12 funeral priests to begin drawing a magic circle. They had already prepared some materials when they came over. They could just start drawing. Complex array patterns were drawn centered around the golden coffin. Nielsen muttered incantations, then beckoned with his hand. A wisp of eerie blue soul fire lit up within the head inside the stone coffin. "My lord, you can speak with her now," Nielsen said softly. Fang Hao nodded and walked over. In the golden coffin, the shriveled flesh at the pupils was now hollow, and soul fire burned within. The mummy struggled slightly, and upon finding she couldn't move, the soul fire flickered violently. "Who are you people?" The shriveled head began to speak. With just a slight movement of the jaw, another large patch of the body at the chest crumbled into fine dust. "Who we are isn't important. I just want to discuss a deal with you." Fang Hao looked down at the mummy lying inside. "Oh, what deal?" The head spoke again, her tone already very calm. It was as if this really was an ordinary conversation, and she showed no concern for her own predicament. "I save you. You work for me," Fang Hao said. "You are the first person who has dared to speak to the queen this way," the head continued. "Is that so? It's nothing to be surprised about. You're dying right now. I just asked the necromancer. Restoring you requires a massive amount of resources and materials. We can consider this an exchange of equal value," Fang Hao said. A skeleton-shaped demon puppet and a mummy with only a head and chest remaining. Both were in an undead state, devoid of expression, and their tones betrayed no emotional shifts. They just talked calmly like this. Hearing Fang Hao's words, the head fell into silence. She indeed felt that she was extremely weak, and her soul fire wouldn't last much longer. After a long silence, the head spoke. I am a queen, and then, I have never taken orders from anyone, nor will I take orders from anyone. Fang Hao also fell silent, then thought and said, times change quickly now. It's very different from the era you used to live in. The little blood princess, Lorana, is also working under me. Rather than saying it's for work, it's more like helping and supporting each other to live better here. His tone wasn't too forceful. After all, a dark gold hero would be a great help to the territory. Hearing Lorana mentioned, the soul fire in the head's pupils flickered slightly. It seemed she likely knew Lorana and felt a bit of surprise that Lorana was willing to become a subordinate to the strange skeleton before her. The gold-eating queen fell silent again, as if considering Fang Hao's words. Fang Hao didn't interrupt. Her silence meant she was already swayed. Even the undead did not want to vanish in death. Wasn't being willing to convert into an undead also a form of fear of death? Just as the soul fire in her eye sockets grew weaker and weaker, she spoke again. I can join your territory, but you must agree to several of my requests. Let's hear them. First, give me the respect and status I deserve. Second, you cannot make me do things that go against my beliefs. Third, my power comes from gold. Give me as much gold as possible. Fourth, help me advance my strength. That's all for now. Fang Hao nodded. Regarding the third point, as for gold, I'll return everything in this underground palace to you, and I'll try to allocate gold to you in the future. However, the territory's development also needs funds, so I can't give it all to you. I can agree to everything else. Fine, then I am willing to join your territory. Perhaps you could make some guarantees so we can trust each other more. The gold-eating queen's soul fire flickered even more. What is your name? Fang Hao. The gold-eating queen's flat voice rang out again. With the great god of the undead above, after joining the territory, Lord Fang Hao's will shall be the direction I advance toward. All foolish things shall be granted equal destruction. This oath sounded a bit convoluted, but the meaning it wanted to express was clear enough. He didn't have a dark gold hero recruitment scroll, so for dark gold heroes he recruited, he could only use this method to constrain their behavior. Swearing to the god of one's faith wasn't as simple as just boasting in the past. It was a very solemn matter. After hearing the gold-eating queen's words, Fang Hao nodded slightly and said, welcome aboard. I'll have someone begin your restoration now. The gold-eating queen did not speak. Instead, the soul fire in her eye sockets slowly dimmed. Fang Hao retreated to the door, and Nielsen strode in. All 12 funeral priests entered the room and moved all the various golden objects inside to the hallway outside, and in several corners of the room. They found 6 organ jars that sealed the gold-eating queen's organs. The gold-eating queen's body was a zombie type, meaning her body possessed organs. Before she was heavily injured and went into slumber, she had removed all her organs and placed them in various corners of the room according to some rule. It was likely to wait for someone to come and save her, or for some other reason. In short, she had made preparations in advance. Otherwise, if her internal organs had powdered along with her body, it would be very difficult to recover. Fang Hao looked at the attributes of the 6 organ jars. 2 of them were magical items that provided orange-gray buffs. The other 4 also sealed organs, but didn't add attributes. They were ordinary containers. Fang Hao just looked and had no intention of taking the organ jars for himself. A dark gold hero was more valuable than organ jars. The room was cleared. According to Nielsen's requirements, Fang Hao took a large amount of the necessary materials from his storage space. When exploring this underground palace earlier, he had already obtained many shadow stones and traces of death. As for the remaining alchemy materials, he also had people purchase them and trade them to him. With everything ready, the ritual officially began. The intricate array patterns emitted bursts of light, and the gathered energy began to restore the body in the golden coffin under Nielsen's guidance. When the restoration reached the chest cavity, the organ jars were opened one by one. The organs, which constantly dripped thick black liquid, were returned to the chest cavity. The ritual went on for a long time, and the shadow stones in the room shattered one after another. When it looked like there were only 3 left, the array patterns of the ritual suddenly contracted, eventually all drilling into the golden coffin. In the next second, a withered hand from within the golden coffin gripped the side of the coffin. Then, the body of the gold-eating queen slowly sat up. It could be seen that the color of the restored parts was different from the chest and head. The gold-eating queen was a zombie-type undead. Her body had flesh and internal organs, though it was no longer elastic like that of a living being. She looked more like a mummy that had just had its bandages removed. The gold-eating queen moved her body. Crack, crack. The clear sound of bones grinding was exceptionally distinct in the room. One feared she might snap her newly restored body. The group of funeral priests bowed slightly to her, and the latter walked out of the massive golden coffin like a queen, supported by Nielsen. The gold-eating queen first nodded slightly to Fang Hao. Then her slender finger tapped on the golden coffin behind her. The massive coffin, encrusted with gems, melted like liquid. The golden liquid formed into streams, crawling up her body and solidifying. Ultimately, golden armor, a golden mask, and a golden crown covered in gems formed on the gold-eating queen's body. And that fist-sized gem was embedded at the top of a golden scepter. The scepter was held in her hand, noble and magnificent. At the door, Fang Hao was dumbfounded. Gold could even be played with like this. And that wasn't all. The gold-eating queen beckoned again. The golden utensils moved to the hallway outside also began to melt, and the golden liquid swirled around Nielsen and the funeral priests, eventually forming golden armor. It fitted over their robes. Thank you, my lord. Nielsen and the others bowed again. So much style. From her appearance, every move was full of style. She truly was like a newly awakened queen bestowing rewards upon the subordinates who came to her aid. Only he, the lord, standing at the door, it was like he had bought a ticket. He was entirely here just to watch the show. When the matters in the room finished, gold-eating queen, Amanda began to walk out. She walked straight up to Fang Hao, bowed elegantly, and said, "Greetings, lord. You're much more flashy than me," Fang Hao thought. On the surface, he just nodded. Shall I call you Amanda from now on? What do you think? That is fine. Let them move all the items here out first. I'll introduce you to the situation of the territory. It might be a bit different from where you used to live, Fang Hao said softly. Next, Nielsen directed the funeral priests to start moving the items out. Meanwhile, Fang Hao introduced Amanda to the territory's situation and the living beings like humans, orcs, dwarves, and trolls. But Amanda just listened silently and didn't show any surprise. You're not surprised? Fang Hao asked Amanda. The immortal race also rules over living beings. The bone tax paid by the living beings every year is the main source of military strength. Amanda's voice came from under the golden mask. The bone tax was a type of tax. Every year, each region had to hand over complete bones and corpses as a form of tax according to requirements. If there were enough who died of old age, it was fine. If the bone tax wasn't enough, they would have to seize living people to fill the quota. Of course, they could also go out and plunder other races. All right, our current location is under the church's surveillance. I'll send you back to the territory later. Good. After the introduction, the items in the room on this last floor were also cleared out. Everyone passed through the pond and returned to the temporary camp. After emerging from the pond, Fang Hao put away the demon puppet. When he appeared before the gold-eating queen, Amanda, in his human form, the elegant and calm queen also showed a brief moment of daze. Although it was impossible to see if there was any expression under the mask, one could tell that her gaze lingered on Fang Hao. She didn't speak for a long time, nor did she make any movement. Also dazed were Dimitrika and Jia and the other living beings, all curiously sizing up the woman wrapped in gold and gems. This style is just too high class. Amanda, let me introduce you. You've met the necromancer Nielsen. This is the lizardman Dimitrika and the orcan Jia, both heroes of the territory. We're all on the same side from now on. After the introduction, Fang Hao continued to introduce Amanda to Dimitrika and the others. This is Amanda of the Undead race, a dark gold hero. She will be our companion from now on. Everyone, get to know each other. When Fang Hao mentioned the Undead, the others finally confirmed Amanda's racial identity. Wrapped entirely in golden armor, with eyeballs visible behind the mask. For a moment, there really was no way to confirm if she was undead. The heroes nodded to each other, considering it a greeting. Amanda remained relatively cold, only nodding in response to everyone without saying anything. All right, everyone prepare to head back, Fang Hao said loudly. Yes, Lord, everyone replied. Everyone began to move, loading the goldware they had carried out onto the carriages. Besides a large amount of goldware, on the 9th floor, they also found a golden treasure chest, but Fang Hao was in no hurry to open it. It was loaded onto a carriage and secured with hemp rope. Everyone started getting busy. During this time, Fang Hao also began to check the attributes of the newly joined Dark Gold hero. Gold-eating Queen, Amanda, rank 6 Dark Gold hero. Faction, Undead. Template, Dark Gold. Racial traits, Undead, Zombie, Light Weakness. Legion talents, Undead Queen, My Will Be Done, Metallic Skeleton Da. Skills, Queen's Majesty, Power of Life and Death, Golden Divine Powered. Innate abilities, Domain Magic Power Mastery, Domain Swordsmanship Mastery, Domain Magic Mastery, Domain Command Mastery. Undead Queen. The undead army led by this unit is automatically blessed by the power of death when attacking. Attack power plus 10%. Upon death, they will explode and produce toxic gas. My Will Be Done. The army led by this unit has attack power plus 15%, defense plus 20%, and magic elemental resistance plus 20%. Metallic Skeleton. Skeleton type undead units led by this unit have defense plus 35% and evasion against arrows and bullets plus 50%. Queen's Majesty. Passive. The army led will not flee or surrender due to morale after the start of a battle. Enemy army morale decreases by 20%. Power of Life and Death. Active. The Queen grants you death and rebirth. Living beings that die within a certain range will automatically transform into undead, join the Queen's faction, and continue fighting. Maximum distance 20 meters. Golden Divine Power. Active. Possesses the ability to manipulate gold. Description: Amanda, the Golden Queen of the Hundredfold Kingdom. Her wisdom and courage were as widely praised as her sense of honor and justice. However, her reign was tragic and brief. She was poisoned to death by political enemies in the prime of her life. The royal family of the Hundredfold Kingdom could not accept this fact, so they invited a necromancer, the enemy of all living beings, to transform the embalmed Amanda into an undead queen to continue leading the kingdom toward glory. When the undead ritual ended and Amanda woke up, her beauty and body had become pale and hard. When she stepped out of the hall again, her entire body was encased in golden armor, and her face was covered by a golden mask carved with her former appearance as she stood before all the people. However, the glory of the Hundredfold Kingdom did not continue. The war between the undead and the living beings gradually wore down this once powerful kingdom, and the queen lay back into her golden coffin, waiting for her next awakening. After reading Amanda's attributes, Fang Hao secretly clicked his tongue. She didn't have many skills, but every single one was powerful. Queen's Majesty was a passive skill. Her own army's morale wouldn't break, while the enemies dropped by 20% immediately. This was somewhat broken. If morale dropped to a certain level, it could even cause an army to surrender or flee. Dropping by 20% right at the start made it very hard to fight afterward. Power of Life and Death transformed living beings who died on the battlefield into undead to continue fighting. There was a 20-meter distance limit, but the numbers should still be significant. The skill descriptions above were all very detailed. Only the last one, Golden Divine Power, had the simplest description, but its effect was the most terrifying. It could liquefy gold and then transform it into any shape. This provided a lot of room for control. If used well, it could be more terrifying than any other skill. He had really found a treasure. He continued to check Amanda's loyalty, hoping it wouldn't be too low. With such a powerful hero, if her loyalty was too low, it would be another thing for him to worry about. Gold-eating Queen. Amanda's current loyalty is 75 points. Not bad, not bad. Quite high, quite high? With Lorana's 26 points as a precedent, Amanda's 75 points seemed very reasonable. This queen had high standards. Well, very high. As Fang Hao looked at the Lord's book, Dimitriko walked over. Lord, everything is ready. We can return. Looking up, the temporary camp had been dismantled, and the carriages were ready. Amanda, Nielsen, you two take the carriage. Prepare to set off, Fang Hao said loudly. Everyone mounted their horses. Amanda walked toward a separate carriage, while Nielsen and the group of funeral priests boarded the carriage behind. Amanda waved her hand, and gold flowed like liquid. Beneath the carriage, it turned into a square footstool. Amanda stepped on the footstool to board the carriage. The footstool then turned back into liquid and flowed into the carriage. Everyone was dumbfounded. So much style. Fang Hao had seen it before, so his reaction was naturally faster. Seeing that everyone was ready, he gave the order loudly. Depart. Return to Li Rong's city. The scouts went ahead, and the convoy moved slowly. The return journey was even smoother. They passed a patrol team on the way, but the other party didn't stop them. They continued forward and returned to Li Rong's territory at noon the next day. Seeing the large amount of gold web brought back in the carriages, and the dark gold hero walking down, Li Rong was completely stunned. Stubbing out the cigarette in her hand, she stepped forward and asked, "The hero recruited from the 9th floor?" Yes, Fang Hao nodded. "Damn, I should have gone. I don't even have a hero yet," Li Rong shouted in jealousy. Speaking of which, the underground palace map and intelligence were provided by Li Rong, yet his harvest was even greater than hers. Seeing her envious and jealous look, Fang Hao smiled slightly. "This is an undead hero. You need to have an undead necromancer and the right faction relationship to recruit her. Simply put, there are prerequisites. You wouldn't have been able to recruit her even if you went." "Oh, really?" Li Rong calmed down. That hero was completely encased in golden armor, so she couldn't tell what race she was. If it were an undead, she wouldn't even dare accept it. Here in Silverwing City, she had to keep her distance from the undead. Otherwise, she would be tied to a stake and burned by the church. Of course, why would I lie to you? Besides, recruiting her cost hundreds of rare materials, Fang Hao said as he walked toward the Lord's manor. Hearing about the prerequisite mission and the large amount of materials spent, Li Rong's heart calmed down quite a bit. "Then, you have to give me some of the gold weh." We agreed. "Half each for the underground palace," Li Rong said with her arms crossed, looking pouted. "Sure." Fang Hao nodded with a smile, then thought for a moment and said, "By the way, regarding the gold weh from last time, I'll exchange Warfire coins with you for them. Give those gold wehs to me." Gold coins and Warfire coins were the currencies currently in circulation. Previously, he and Li Rong each took half of the gold weh obtained from the underground palace. When he recruited Amanda, he had agreed to return all the gold weh from the underground palace to her, so he could only trade back the ones he had given to Li Rong. "Fine, I'll listen to you," Li Rong said. Li Rong naturally agreed to Fang Hao's proposal. Her territory didn't have a mint blueprint, so those funerary gold wehs couldn't be directly converted into cash. Now that Fang Hao was willing to exchange Warfire coins for them, she was naturally willing. "Haha, good. Sister Li really is generous." Li Rong glanced at him. "It's nothing. You helped me kill Sandek. I haven't properly thanked you yet." The two entered the hall and sat down in chairs. "Don't worry about it. I wanted to kill him too." Fang Hao thought for a moment and continued. "The shops in Silverwing City probably won't be repaired by the end of winter. Do you have any plans?" Mentioning this matter, Li Rong sighed slightly again. "Sigh? What can I do? I can only wait for winter to end and the shops to be fixed. Whether they'll be willing to rent to me, then is still hard to say," Li Rong said with a frown. Her territory neither farmed nor hunted. It relied entirely on shop goods to supply the territory's development. If nothing had happened to the shops, her development would have been much faster than others. But now that the shops supporting her development were destroyed, her path was suddenly blocked. Fortunately, she had saved a lot of money before. Otherwise, she wouldn't even survive the winter. "Have you considered my previous proposal?" Fang Hao looked at Li Rong with a smile. "You mean, the matter of us opening a shop together?" "Yes, my territory has many cities, enough for you to show your talents. You won't have to worry about shop fees in the future, and there won't be any thugs or underworld characters coming to cause trouble. You can manage it with peace of mind. Besides, if you plan to open shops in native cities, I will also give you support. I have both money and soldiers," Fang Hao said softly, picking up his water glass and taking a sip. Li Rong didn't answer. Instead, she took out a cigarette, tapped it twice on the table, put it in her mouth, and lit it. The room fell into silence. It wasn't until the cigarette was half burned that Li Rong asked, "How will we split it?" "An 80-20 split. I'll be responsible for the funds and shops, and you'll be responsible for management. So, 80 for me and 20 for you," Fang Hao said. Li Rong shook her head. "I have the technology, and it's been proven in the market to yield a return on profit. When the time comes, I'll still be the one managing the shops. Why should you, a hands-off boss, take so much? Let's do 50-50. We're old acquaintances, after all. Business is business. Don't play the emotional card. Your source of goods can't support the shop's supply at all. With your ability, you can't build a production factory. I'll have to be responsible for that too." 70-30, Fang Hao continued. Li Rong remained silent, puffing out smoke one breath at a time. After another long silence, she continued. "I want to open 2 shops before winter, and after spring, there must be a factory with over 500 people. Can you do it? With the shops in Silverwing City burned down, She needed shops to maintain current sales and factory expenses. On her side, many people were recruited from nearby villages. Once they were dismissed, it would be very hard to get them back. Fang Hao thought for a moment and replied, 2 shops are no problem, and a 500-person factory is no problem either. But can you guarantee the goods will be delivered to the shops during winter? You don't need to worry about that. I'll arrange for transmigrators to manage the shops. We can restock through the trading channel then, Li Rong replied. Fang Hao nodded. Okay, I have one more requirement. Let's hear it, Li Rong said calmly. In fact, she understood in her heart that cooperation was the best way forward right now. Fang Hao wanted a piece of the cosmetics business. She naturally knew that. But opening a shop in this world, she also felt a sense of powerlessness. The exclusion by natives, harassment from underground forces, and exploitation by nobles. Plus, the shop was gone in a fire. It would be very difficult for her to start over on her own. Moreover, she had to consider the subordinates following her. She still had some savings. But what about the transmigrators under her and the workers in the factory? It was hard to say if they could even survive this winter. Agreeing to Fang Hao might seem like he was getting a great deal, but in reality, it was also helping her through her difficulties. If they really could open as many shops as he said, then whether she opened a shop in Silverwing City or not wouldn't matter. It would be enough for her city's development. Become my subsidiary city, Fang Hao said seriously. Li Rong's brow furrowed. Her lord's book had also devoured several cities, all of which became her subordinates. She naturally knew the effect after devouring. She didn't expect Fang Hao to want to turn her city into a subsidiary city. I offered myself to you, and you didn't want me, and now you want my city? What's going on in that little head of yours? Li Rong said through gritted teeth. Look, why are you bringing that up again? Li Rong thought for a bit. What do you mean? Why do you want my city? That way, my lifeblood will be in your hands. What if you go back on your word? Fang Hao continued. The situation in my territory is a bit special. For safety's sake, I'll only trust you if you become my subsidiary city. Of course, your city is still yours to command. I won't coerce you into anything regarding what we've agreed on. Li Rong was silent for a bit longer before finally nodding. Fine, I agree. But my subordinates must all be under my management, and you must discuss anything with me in advance. Deal. Li Rong didn't waste any more breath and directly took off her lord's book, handing it to Fang Hao. The latter took it and directly chose to devour it. Devour successful. Your lord's book is currently level 6. Experience required for upgrade, 13/20. After devouring, the required experience changed from August 20th to 13/20. This also meant that Li Rong herself had already devoured 5 lord's books. Reassigning this place to Li Rong, a city lord's book was placed into her hands. Li Rong wasn't polite and took the city lord's book. She then sat on Fang Hao's lap, one hand holding a cigarette and the other arm around Fang Hao's shoulder, whispering, "From now on, I'm yours. You'll have to take care of me then." You, just as Fang Hao was about to say something, footsteps came from outside. Li Rong's subordinate strode in, was momentarily stunned by the scene before him, and turned to leave. Li Rong was also a bit embarrassed. She got off Fang Hao's lap and sat to the side. She asked expressionlessly, "What is it?" The subordinate militia regained his composure, bowed slightly, and said, "Lord, a cavalryman has arrived outside the city. He says some lady sent him to bring a message to City Lord Fang Hao." Li Rong instantly looked at Fang Hao. The latter nodded and said, "Let him in." Li Rong said to her subordinate, "Let him in." Yes. The militia quickly retreated. Not long after, a person was brought in. It was the commander of the personal guards by Rebecca's side. Upon seeing Fang Hao, he bowed. "Lord, the lady asked me to bring you a message. Speak." The commander didn't speak, his gaze instead shifting to Li Rong and the militia in the room. Fang Hao understood the meaning. "Li Rong, you stay. Have your subordinates go out first." Li Rong nodded. "You go out first, and don't let anyone else get close to here." The militia took the order and retreated. In the room, only Fang Hao, Li Rong, and the commander remained. "Speak." The commander nodded and said in a low voice, "The Hall of Justice and the Church of Light have gathered 20,000 people and set off 3 days ago to support the dwarven Boffing Mountain. Other human cities are gathering troops one after another and will also head to Boffing Mountain." Hearing this news, Fang Hao's brow instantly furrowed. Humans were going to support the dwarves. Upon hearing this news, Fang Hao's heart was still somewhat shocked. Winter was just around the corner, and given the current state of affairs, which was close to the Middle Ages. Launching a large-scale war would consume far too many resources. Unless absolutely necessary, no power would be willing to start a war at this time. However, the 100 Cities Federation was still going to send aid to the dwarves. From this perspective, the humans had also made a massive decision. However, the dwarves clearly hadn't told the humans the specific number of undead. Otherwise, Silverwing City wouldn't have sent 20,000 people to their deaths first. Will the other cities also send troops later? Fang Hao looked at the guard commander. The latter nodded and replied, "In this kind of war against foreign races, each city will dispatch corresponding troops according to the city level. With Lisis City's current city level, it must send at least 10,000 troops to join the allied army. Lisis City's city level was 12. For those above level 10, a minimum troop contribution would be set. Human cities were numerous, and once integrated like this, it was a significant number." Fang Hao thought for a moment and continued to ask, "When will the 20,000 from the Hall of Justice and the Church set out? And when will the people from the other cities set out?" The Silverwing City team set out 2 days ago. According to the route, they are expected to pass through Cracked Stone Bridge today. The order the madam received is that Boffing Mountain must be reinforced within 2 months. Therefore, the madam wants to ask for your opinion. The guard replied seriously. Fang Hao nodded. "Good, I understand. I'll go back in a bit and speak to Rebecca personally." "Very well, Lord City Lord." The guard bowed again, exited the room, and left. The hall became quiet again. Only then did Li Rong ask curiously, "Do the dwarves have something to do with you?" Having heard everything so far, how could she not understand the meaning behind it? It was obvious that the war on the dwarves' side was related to Fang Hao, which was why someone had specifically come to inform him of the Human Federation's movements. Fang Hao glanced at her and said, "It's fine to tell you now. My people are currently attacking Boffing Mountain. At the current speed, we can take the entire Boffing Mountain before winter arrives." Li Rong was completely stunned. She had speculated about Fang Hao's strength. He had high-tier heroes, special troop types, and she heard his territory was very large. But now, he said he had already started a war with the Dwarven faction. To what extent must a transmigrator develop to go to war with a major power and aim to conquer the enemy's region before winter? With every contact, she thought she had finally seen Fang Hao's final trump card. But every single time, her assumptions were refreshed. Going to war with an entire race. This was simply insane. "Are you lying to me?" Li Rong asked tentatively. While flipping through the Lord's book, Fang Hao replied, "Why would I lie to you? We're on the same side now. There's no benefit in lying to you." "Crazy. This is simply crazy," Li Rong muttered to herself while fanning herself with her hand. Fang Hao ignored her and instead opened the private chat to contact Dong Jiayue. "Jiayue, how is the war going? Do you need any support?" "Soon." Dong Jiayue's reply was sent over. "No need. Everything is sufficient. It's just that the dwarves' resistance has increased quite a bit, so the speed of the offensive has slowed down." This was also within expectations. The closer they got to the central area, the stronger the resistance became. How could it be like the outermost perimeter, where they could split their forces 5 ways and occupy 5 cities in one night? The dwarves have requested aid from the humans. They've already sent 20,000 soldiers to support them, and the other cities will also mobilize troops for support later. Fang Hao told Dong Jiayue the news he had just received. After a while, Dong Jiayue replied, 20,000 people are nothing, but continuous troop reinforcements will drag out the speed of the offensive. If the war continues, it's very likely to evolve into a simultaneous war with both the dwarves and the humans. Fang Hao didn't reply immediately, but thought about Dong Jiayue's words. Dong Jiayue's analysis made a lot of sense. 20,000 people might be nothing. Placed within this white bone army of 2 million, they couldn't stir up much of a storm. But what if the humans continuously reinforce their troops? Dong Jiayue would have to arrange personnel to block them. Once the conflict between the two sides became significant and casualties were too high, it was very likely to turn into the undead fighting both the humans and the dwarves at the same time. In this way, it would conflict with his plan to develop the human side. All right, I'll think of a way on this end. Speed up the progress on your side, and strive to take Boffing Mountain as early as possible. After thinking it through, Fang Hao replied to Dong Jiayue, "Okay, Brother Hao." After ending the chat, Li Rong was still beside him, silently watching Fang Hao. It was as if she was still wondering why Fang Hao was developing so fast and what the secret was. Fang Hao closed the Lord's book and also looked at Li Rong. He asked, Where is cracked stone bridge? Oh, here. Li Rong opened the city lord's book and pointed to a location on the map. Since it was a top-down view, one could see that this was a dried-up riverbed, with a stone bridge connecting the two sides. After glancing at the distance between cracked stone bridge and their current location, Fang Hao nodded. He said toward the door, "Have all the heroes come over. I have something to tell them." Before long, several heroes entered the hall. Sitting down in the nearby seats, Fang Hao explained the situation in Silverwing City. And Jia had been feeding the Red General and hadn't paid much attention to the matter at all. Dimitrika was also frowning in deep thought. On the contrary, the gold-eating queen, Amanda, was silent for a moment before saying, "Delaying the human reinforcements is actually not difficult. As long as we create an illusion for them, we can make them afraid to send troops for support in the short term." Everyone looked at her. Fang Hao asked, "What kind of illusion?" Amanda stroked the gem on her cane and continued, "Humans are too easily driven by emotions. As long as they believe that Silverwing City is also under threat, those noble lords living in the city will naturally become anxious and won't dare to send troops to aid others. Never mind 20,000. It would be hard to even send out a small squad." Everyone's hearts stirred. This was indeed a simple and most likely effective plan. The idea is very good, but how do we make the council and the nobles believe that Silverwing City is unsafe? Fang Hao continued to ask. From behind the mask, a voice spoke again. "First, we must make it clear to the humans who the enemy they fear most is. The undead." Fang Hao replied. There were enemies more powerful than the undead, but because of the church's existence, the undead were the greatest and most irreconcilable enemy. Correct. If undead appear near Silverwing City, the council will realize they face the same undead threat. Next, they will naturally want to solve the internal threat to humanity first. At that time, without the Justice Alliance leading the way, the reinforcements from other cities will naturally not rush to use their own people to rescue the dwarves. It won't be hard to delay them until Boffing Mountain is occupied, Amanda said. That makes sense. There are undead, but they aren't on this side. Moving them over on a large scale could easily cause problems. Fang Hao stroked his chin in thought. Amanda continued, "You can leave this matter to me. Actually, it's not hard to solve, just a feint." Fang Hao looked at her seriously and confirmed again. "You mean you'll go alone to hold back 20,000 people, right? If it's just about using the identity of the undead to cause some trouble, it's actually not difficult. Are you sure there won't be any danger?" Fang Hao continued to ask. "If your intelligence is accurate, the possibility of me being in danger is not high. Even if there is danger, I can escape," Amanda replied calmly. Fang Hao pondered for a moment and looked at Amanda repeatedly. Finally, he nodded. "All right, I'll leave this to you. If you find the situation is wrong, retreat immediately. Letting those 20,000 people through is fine. Just ensure your own safety." Amanda nodded. "All right." Fang Hao thought for a moment and handed the space pendant to Amanda. "This magic necklace has 3 cubic meters of storage space inside. Take it to store gold." Amanda nodded and took it. Gold-eating queen. Amanda's loyalty to you has increased by 2 points. Current loyalty is 77 points to. Not bad. It went up by 2 points. It's just that for higher-level heroes, the increase from giving good things is very limited. After all, they've seen too many things, and it's hard for their hearts to feel much of a ripple. Unlike in Jia, who was happy for half a day when given a purple necklace. After everything was settled, everyone walked out of the hall. A carriage full of gold items and a carriage for passengers were parked in front of the city lord's mansion. These were prepared for Amanda. Amanda reached out her hand, and the gold items gathered like flowing water, eventually turning into a 3 cubic meter solid gold block that landed on the ground with a thud. It was taken into her space pendant. Next, Amanda went back to the carriage. At the same time, Fang Hao cast demon teleportation nearby, sending Nielsen back to the main city and teleporting a bone dragon over. Fang Hao said, "Amanda, I'll leave this bone dragon to you. If there's danger, just ride the bone dragon to escape. We can talk about delaying them later." Amanda glanced at the bone dragon, slightly surprised that Fang Hao also had this kind of undead troop type, but she didn't say much. The remaining gold flowed again, wrapping the bone dragon's bones in a gold exterior, as if it were coated in a layer of gold paint. And the white steel armor worn by the bone dragon was the same, covered by another layer of gold. The entire body flashed so brightly in the sunlight that it made one's eyes hurt. Once everything was ready, Amanda stepped onto a golden ladder and sat on the dragon's back. She nodded to Fang Hao. The bone dragon pushed off with its legs, soaring into the sky with a gust of wind and disappearing from sight. So awesome, Li Rong said softly as she stood there. It cost a lot of gold. Fang Hao also said softly, watching the direction where the bone dragon had disappeared. Several carriages of gold items were just gone like that. After Amanda left, Fang Hao took out the golden treasure chest he had obtained on the 9th floor. He chose to open it directly. Obtained. Spirit Binding Tower Building Blueprint. Purple. Queen's Golden Tower Building Blueprint. Purple. Fine Iron Crescent Blade Crafting Blueprint. Purple. 202 Warfire Coins. 13 Shadowstones. Clatter. A purple light appeared. 3 blueprints appeared in Fang Hao's hands. It didn't look like much, but the quality was already quite good. Having 3 purple blueprints was much more practical than several useless green and blue ones appearing like before. Spirit Binding Tower. 2,200 tough wood, 5,200 fine stone bricks, 850 cast iron blocks, 1,200 metal parts, 35 shadow stones, 5 traces of death. Description: a tower bound by vengeful spirits. Every late night, one can hear the painful wails of countless wronged souls. The Spirit Binding Tower should be the recruitment building for the Spirit Binding Guard, seen in the Underground Palace. A Tier 7 undead troop type that possessed intelligence. As long as it was built, the undead strength of the territory would be greatly improved. It was exactly the building blueprint Fang Hao needed right now. Queen's Golden Tower. 3,000 fine stone bricks, 3,500 cast iron blocks, 2,500 fine iron, 1,500 gold blocks, 850 metal parts, 320 mithril, 12 traces of prayer, 5 perfect essence. Description: an ancient high tower made of pure gold, representing the Queen's sacred decree, a wonder built over endless years. Fang Hao was very curious. Exactly how high was this golden pagoda? The materials required were actually so many, and the function hadn't even been introduced. With mithril and traces of prayer appearing, it was likely a functional building, like a divine statue. It would be a building that provided a buff to a certain attribute. But the divine statue didn't consume this many materials back then. Unable to figure it out, he set it aside for now. Next was the last blueprint. A purple weapon blueprint. Fine iron crescent blade. 5 cast iron blocks. 5 fine iron. 1 tough leathered. Description: a blade developed based on special troop types, shaped like a crescent moon. Fang Hao also had some impression of this crescent blade. In the Underground Palace, the Spirit Binding Guard's weapons were shaped like crescents, somewhat similar to the scimitars used by Mongols in movies. It was just as well. The quality of the single-handed sword blueprints in his hand had never been high. Now the quality of single-handed swords was improved. After checking the blueprint contents, Fang Hao recorded all of them. Meanwhile, Li Rong watched eagerly from the side. When do you plan to go to my city? We need to finalize the matters of the factory and shops. Fang Hao looked at Li Rong. In a few days, I'll handle things on this end first and then notify you. Fang Hao thought about it and agreed. Then wait for Amanda to return, and I'll open a teleportation array to bring both of you over together. It will save time. All right, I'll listen to you. 2:00 p.m. Fang Hao led his people out of Li Rong's city. The group rode away in a flurry and soon disappeared from sight. Inside the city lord's mansion, Li Rong watched the notifications constantly appearing in the city lord's book. Unable to contain the joy in her heart, she cheered loudly. Fang Hao shared a blue blueprint with you. Spirit Field. Fang Hao shared a blue blueprint with you. Large Quarry. Fang Hao shared a blue blueprint with you. Greatsword Infantry Training Camp. Fang Hao shared a purple blueprint with you. Lionheart Knights Training Camp. Fang Hao shared a blue blueprint with you. Storm Iron Set. Lines of information appeared like a screen being flooded. The blueprints she had once craved but couldn't get were all unlocked today. This joy even made her think it was a dream. After being excited for quite a while, she kept patting her chest to calm herself down. Fortunately, I agreed. I almost let this fat sheep get away. At that time, she had almost refused Fang Hao's invitation. The moon was bright, and the stars were few. A team of 20,000 people set out from Silverwing City. Holding torches, they were still on their way. A temple attendant quickly walked to the front of the carriage. He said softly, "Lord Saint, Cracked Stone Bridge is just ahead." Cracked Stone Bridge. The dried-up riverbed was over 10 meters wide and about 4 meters deep. A stone bridge connected the two banks, and in the center of the stone bridge, there was a huge crack. Thus, It was named Cracked Stone Bridge by those who passed by. Saint Suhaid sat in the carriage and asked softly, "Did the commander say when to camp?" "He said there's a village after crossing Cracked Stone Bridge, and we'll camp there." "Good, I understand." In this operation, the commander of the Hall of Justice was in charge. Suhaid and 3 other saints, for in total, brought 5,000 people from the church along. Although this operation was dangerous, it was also a good opportunity to boost their track records. A saint with a blank record would find it hard to gain an advantage in future competitions. Clop, clop, clop. The army continued forward. The road beneath their feet began to turn into rock, and a tapping sound echoed as they stepped on it. Just then, suddenly, a chorus of startled cries came from the front of the team. "What is that thing?" "There's an enemy. Prepare for battle." The shouts startled everyone. They were still within human territory, near Silverwing City. Who would dare to launch an attack on the army of the Hall of Justice and the church? Suhaid yanked open the carriage curtain. In the night, he saw streams of golden liquid, like winding golden snakes, flowing toward the army ahead. These golden snakes climbed onto the soldiers' bodies. They wrapped around their heads. In the next second, the golden liquid turned into heavy golden metal balls. Clang, clang, clang. One by one, the soldiers' heads fell heavily to the ground. They stopped struggling. "What is this thing?" Everyone fell into a panic. With their heads wrapped in metal balls, they could be smothered to death. Clang, clang, clang. Continuously, soldiers' heads were being encased in heavy blocks of gold. In their panicked struggles, they fell headfirst to the ground and never rose again. From the way they frantically brandished their weapons, one could feel the soldiers' panic and despair. Even though their heads were encased, no cries for help could be heard by the outside world. The sudden turn of events caused chaos within the 20,000-man army. Soldiers scattered in all directions, trying to evade that golden fluid which they simply couldn't attack. But even so, people continued to die incessantly. What is that thing? Who dares to attack the army of Silverwing City?" Suhaid's voice was a bit panicked. All along, his status as a saint of the church had granted him direct access to power and status. While other transmigrators were still worrying about whether they could survive tomorrow, his life was even better and more comfortable than it had been in the modern world. Holding great power, a single word from him about God's will could decide the life or death of many. This had made him believe all along that he was the protagonist of this world, and everyone else was merely a supporting character on his path to a higher position. However, seeing people being killed in this manner now, with no way to stop it, he began to panic. It turned out that death was so close to him. "Lord Saint, get down quickly. The carriage is too obvious." A temple attendant nearby immediately stepped forward to warn him. Right. Suhaid pulled open the carriage door and scrambled out in a panic. His feet stumbled, and he nearly took a tumble. Supported by the attendant, he retreated a further distance. Only then did Suhaid continue to ask, "Who attacked the army? Could it be a mage?" This method of attack was very close to a mage's ability. The attendant replied, "I'm not sure. The commander's side is likely about to counterattack." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Just as he finished speaking, several signal flares shot into the sky from the rear. The entire cracked stone bridge was instantly illuminated. Under everyone's searching gazes, on the other side of the cracked stone bridge stood a woman clad in golden armor and a bone dragon whose body and head were likewise covered in gold. The reason she was identified as a woman was solely based on her height and the curves of her chest. "It's the undead. Fall back. Archers ready. Fire. Swish, swish, swish." The previously chaotic army began to move under the command. The infantry began to retreat, no longer entangling with the golden liquid. Then, a burst of bowstrings sounded, and a dense volley of arrows shot toward the woman on the other side of the stone bridge. Ding, ding, ding. The bone dragon coiled its body, shielding the golden-armored woman in the center. The arrows struck the golden armor on the bone dragon's body, creating a series of clanging sounds. The golden-armored woman did not dodge. She simply stood within the bone dragon's protection, looking coldly at the group of people across the bridge. Both sides stared at each other. Priests, cast buffs, Temple Knight Regiment, prepare, came a high-pitched command. The soldiers of the church faction began to move. The Temple Knight Regiment, clad in heavy armor and wielding judgment great swords, strode forward. The priests behind them began to chant softly, and beams of light were cast upon the knights. Radiant circles of light appeared beneath their feet. The church's Temple Knights' attacks carried the power of light, which possessed a natural suppression against dark and undead troop types. Attack! Clatter! The Temple Knights began their forward charge. Across the cracked stone bridge, the bone dragon twisted its massive body. Its body continued to protect the golden-armored woman while its massive head aimed at the bridge ahead, opening its mouth to spit out a dark black pillar of light. The massive dark energy enveloped several people on the stone bridge. After struggling for only a few seconds, their flesh was stripped away, leaving behind only white skeletons. This scene did not halt the Temple Knight Regiment's pace. Amidst roars and curses against dark creatures, they continued to stride forward. Arrows and magic poured from the other side of the bridge toward them, and the Temple Knights, under various energy buffs, were quickly closing in. The golden-armored woman lightly patted the bone dragon's neck. The bone dragon's body released the woman and crouched on the ground. The woman flipped onto the dragon's back. The bone dragon exerted force with its legs and took to the sky before the knights could cross the bridge. The massive bone dragon, wearing golden armor, circled once in the air. It then dove down from the sky, preparing its dragon breath. The humans below quickly scattered, no longer standing in dense formations. Arrows were shot from below at the bone dragon, and the priest's holy word spells constantly shone down upon the bone dragon's head. The church's holy word spells had an elemental suppression against the undead. Even though a tier 10 bone dragon wouldn't die just like that, its body began to wither and decay at a visible rate. Its downward momentum slowed, and the death breath it spat out also veered off course. It only destroyed some supply carriages and a few soldiers. Seeing that the ballistae in the rear had been loaded and the church's priests and temple knights were ready for battle, Amanda, in the air, no longer intended to continue the entanglement. She lightly patted the bone dragon's neck as it circled in the air and said coldly to those below, "Tell your archbishop that I will lead an army to trample Silverwing City and turn all of you into my slaves, to serve me for eternity without ever knowing fatigue." After saying this, without waiting for any reaction from the forces below, she rode the bone dragon and disappeared into the night sky. They waited for a long time. Still, no enemies attacked. Clip-clop, clip-clop. Several people on fast horses detached from the group and galloped towards Silverwing City at full speed. After a good while, the command from the rear was passed down. The entire army is to retreat and return to the nearby villages to station and rest. The army began to clear the battlefield and then started to retreat. This time, no one dared to sit in a carriage. Everyone marched on foot with the army, and everyone knew that the plan to support the dwarves was likely going to fall through. With the undead attacking right next to Silverwing City, how could they have the energy to worry about others? Moreover, hearing that golden-armored woman's words, she was about to attack Silverwing City. Once this news reached the city, it would likely scare those noble lords into wetting their pants. They would surely demand the army prioritize protecting the safety of Silverwing City. The next morning, he didn't go out of his way to inquire about the news. When Rebecca and Olivia, the two close friends, were reluctantly saying their goodbyes, he heard some information from Olivia's instructions. She said the army that set out last night had been attacked by the undead. They had to be extra careful on the road, try to stick to the main roads with patrols, and avoid small paths, and so on. One could hear the importance Olivia placed on the undead in her tone. She pulled Rebecca aside and talked for a long time before finally saying a reluctant goodbye. After everything was prepared, the army left Silverwing City and headed north in a grand procession. On the way back, no dangers or ambushes appeared. Once they passed Jinmasitu, and the remaining road was no longer dangerous, Fang Hao directly activated the teleportation, taking the heroes and Rebecca back to Li Sis. The rest of the army continued their journey back under the command of the guard captain. The teleportation light curtain closed. Fang Hao, Rebecca, Dimitrika, and the others appeared in the hall of the Lord's Manor. The soft carpet and the magnificently decorated chandelier made everyone smile, especially Rebecca. The familiar setting and sense of security finally allowed her heart to settle. Finally home, it was so good. City Lord, Madam, you're back. A passing maid discovered the suddenly appearing group and cried out in surprise, immediately bowing in greeting. Yes, where's Lorana? Rebecca asked, her gaze subconsciously flickering toward Fang Hao. The latter quietly wiped a bit of sweat from his forehead. Oh, there's a conflict between a mercenary group and some merchants in the West District. Miss Lorana took some people over there. The maid immediately replied. Mercenary groups had manpower, but the merchants weren't weak either, as they were backed by chambers of commerce and nobles. Conflicts between them were always quite troublesome. When Lorana returns, tell her to come see me directly, Rebecca instructed. Yes, madam. Rebecca looked back at Fang Hao. Are you staying here tonight? She also gave Fang Hao a subtle look. Fang Hao could only pretend not to understand and said, No, I've been out for too long. I'm afraid there might be danger in my city. I'll come see you in a couple of days. Saying this, he took out the cosmetics and clothing he had purchased in Silverwing City. There were also gifts for Lorana inside, intended to boost her abysmal loyalty. There was some reluctance in Rebecca's eyes, but she finally said, Fine, once these few days pass, I'll go to your place to play chess with Njia. Njia was currently trying to revive the Red General, who had fainted from fright due to the teleportation. Hearing Rebecca's words, she nodded and said, When the time comes, I'll have Nielsen play with you. He's very good at chess. All right. After a few more words with Rebecca, Fang Hao activated the teleportation again and returned to his own city. Inside the Lord's manor, a rabbit maid, wearing her maid uniform, was sticking her little bottom out, humming an unknown tune while wiping dust off the tables and chairs. Only when the group made some noise did the maid notice the several people who had suddenly appeared. When she carefully identified the faces of the newcomers, she immediately let out a joyful scream. Sister Air, Master is back. Step, step, step. Hurried footsteps came from upstairs. Then, Air was seen leading 2 rabbit maids, running down from the second floor. She looked at Fang Hao and threw herself directly into his arms. The other 2 maids who followed her down, plus the one who had shouted from the first floor, all hugged him as well. They surrounded Fang Hao in the middle, hugging him tightly. Master, are you leaving again? Air looked up, her expression full of anticipation. Fang Hao shook his head. I'm not leaving. I'm staying in for the winter. That's great. Not just Air, but the other maids also cheered. Their eyes were full of tenderness as they looked at him. Fang Hao struggled to free his hugged arms and said softly, Let go of me first. I brought gifts for you. Air, distribute them to everyone. Hearing there were gifts, the maids' expressions brightened even more. They immediately let go of him. Fang Hao took out all the gifts he had brought back in his storage space, piling a large heap on the floor. These are cosmetics. Asidi, and Jia, and Loli all know how to use them. I'll have them teach you later. The clothes are summer styles. Since it's getting cold now, wait until next year to wear them. Fang Hao introduced the pile of items. Understood, Master. Air and the other maids immediately turned their attention to the cosmetics, chattering away. Meanwhile, Fang Hao walked out of the Lord's Hall and headed toward the barracks. Along the way, he saw the maids and Earth Spirit maidens, who greeted him. He responded to each with a smile. Coming back after a trip, why did he feel so beloved? He walked all the way to the central plaza. In the center of the plaza was a flower bed where the maids had planted many bright flowers, though they were all transplanted from the wild and weren't any precious varieties. They were now yellowed and withered. On one side of the plaza was the Pantheon, where many divine statues were enshrined. On the other side was the hero altar, used for resurrecting heroes, though it hadn't been used yet. Passing through the plaza, Fang Hao came to a halt. He opened the Lord's book and flipped to the Queen's Golden Tower blueprint. He had obtained 2 blueprints in the underground palace. The Spirit Binding Tower was clearly a barracks and should be built in the barracks area, while the Queen's Golden Tower seemed more suitable to be built here. Queen's Golden Tower, fine stone bricks 3,000, cast iron block 3,500, fine iron 2,500, gold blocks 1,500, metal parts 850, mithril 320, traces of prayer 12, perfect essence 5. He chose an empty spot next to the Pantheon and selected build. A purple light flashed, and after a good while, the entire golden pagoda was completed. A base of fine stone bricks about as tall as a person supported a golden tower that rose straight up. At the tip of the tower was the image of a queen holding a scepter in one hand and a book in the other. The entire tower was golden and glittering, somewhat dazzling under the reflection of the sun. Queen's Golden Tower. Category: Wonder Building. Abilities: Under the Queen's Grace. Territory Public Security plus 20%. Reproduction plus 35%. Enlightenment plus 25%. Commerce plus 15%. Tax revenue plus 10%. Note: Queen Amanda must join the territory for the pagoda's effects to become active. Description: An ancient tower made of pure gold, representing the Queen's divine decree. A wonder built over endless ages. Holy cow, a wonder building. No wonder it's so tall and shiny. By comparison, his king statue was a bit too simple, being just a stone carving. Fang Hao took a special look at enlightenment. Enlightenment. Territory residents find it easier to learn and understand new skills. Useful. This tower is actually quite good. It's worth the materials it consumed. Speaking of which, Amanda's golden statue didn't have a single undead attribute. It was more like a statue of a human monarch. After building the queen's golden statue, Fang Hao continued toward the undead barracks area. Lord, a woman's voice came from afar. Looking to one side, he saw a group of women with beast horns on their heads and firm arms, working out and lifting weights at the Blackstone training ground. The Earth Spirit Maidens. Before Fang Hao left, he had recruited them to lead ordinary skeletons in patrolling the territory's surroundings. At this moment, each of them looked like a fitness coach, their bodies covered in muscle blocks. They looked somewhat fierce. Next to the Earth Spirit Maidens, some bunny girls were also training. However, they didn't look as powerful as the Earth Spirit Maidens. Their skin was fair and they were drenched in sweat. Right, remember to rest. Don't overwork yourselves. Okay, thank you, Lord. After saying this, the women continued their fitness training. Recruited troop types cannot be improved through exercise, but maintaining practice can improve one's combat techniques. The bunny girls were natives and could be improved through training. They seemed quite hardworking. Every one of them was very motivated. Fang Hao continued forward, reaching the barracks area. Arriving at the military camp, the skeleton transformation field was automatically converting some beast corpses. The meat from beasts hunted during patrols would be stripped off for food, while the bones were thrown directly into the transformation field for conversion. Fang Hao glanced at the positions of the other buildings. He felt that the military camp area was a bit crowded. Moreover, hundredfold amplification would take effect every time he recruited. With things so clustered, troop movements would also be very difficult when the time came. He took a look around. Fang Hao shifted the building positions toward the east. He created a significant distance from the previous camp locations. This way, recruitment with hundredfold amplification wouldn't be as crowded as before. After finalizing the positions, he opened the Lord's book and found the blueprint. Spirit Binding Tower. Tough wood 2200. Fine stone bricks 5200. Cast iron block 850. Metal parts 1200. Shadowstone 35. Traces of death 5. Confirm construction. Purple light instantly surged upwards, as the light pieced together the shape of a tower bit by bit. Finally, the light dissipated, and a complete tower appeared before his eyes. It was a stone tower about 5 or 6 stories high, with grayish-white walls and wooden doors and windows. Outside the tower, mists occasionally drifted around it. They looked like aggrieved souls bound by the tower. Spirit Binding Tower. Category: Special Building. Faction: Undead. Recruitable: Spirit Binding Guard. Spirit Binding Guard. Wriggling Spine 7. Traces of Death 4. Starlight Silver Tooth. Description: a tower bound by resentful spirits. Every night, the painful wails of countless aggrieved souls can be heard. As expected, the Spirit Binding Guard appeared. He remembered very clearly from his time in the underground palace. These Tier 7 Spirit Binding Guards, though they had a skeleton appearance, possessed intelligence. Having intelligence versus not having it were two completely different situations. Skeleton soldiers without intelligence could only execute simple commands, while those with intelligence possessed judgment. When patrolling, they wouldn't mindlessly kill every living being that entered the territory. If they encountered enemies, they could also bring back intelligence. Without delay, Fang Hao immediately began recruitment. Hundredfold amplification triggered. Recruited 101 Spirit Binding Guards. Let's recruit 100 first to see. Clatter. A sheet of light appeared on the flat, open ground in front of him. The figures of the Spirit Binding Guards appeared one after another. At this moment, a squad of skeleton warriors happened to pass by on patrol. As the two groups crossed paths, the difference between them was very obvious. Compared to ordinary skeleton warriors, the Spirit Binding Guards had thicker bones, a blackish color, and longer arms. In their hollow skeleton's eye sockets, ghostly blue flames flared up. Whoosh! After a brief moment of confusion, the Spirit Binding Guards all fixed their gazes on Fang Hao. After a slight hesitation, they bowed one after another. Greetings, great immortal lord. The Spirit Binding Guards' voices were low and raspy, distinctly different from the voices of living beings. Speaking in unison, they still carried a certain aura. Welcome to the fold, Fang Hao said loudly. Then, he immediately checked the Spirit Binding Guard's attributes. Spirit Binding Guard, Tier 7. Faction, Undead. Racial traits. Undead, hollow skeleton, light weakness. Skills, cleave, defender, lingering resentful spirit. Innate ability, advanced one-handed blade mastery. Cleave, a heavy strike filled with soulful resentment, dealing an additional 15% physical damage. If the target is a living being, the wound is difficult to heal. Defender, when protecting a specific area or person, defense increases by 18%. Lingering resentful spirit. Upon the unit's death, the resentful spirit within the body will harass an area within 5 meters. Living targets in this area will randomly suffer negative states such as fear and decreased morale. Description: Spirit Binding Guards are outstanding warriors among the Gold-Eating Queen's elite troops, retaining all the discipline and combat skills from their past lives. In battle, the Spirit Binding Guards form an unshakable armored army. They have made enemies bleed on the battlefield in countless battles, and countless foes have fallen beneath their unwavering will and sharp weapons. The Spirit Binding Guards' attributes were decent, but not overly stunning. Among their skills, besides cleave being an offensive skill, the description of defender made them seem more like a defensive-oriented or personal guard-type troop unit, providing an 18% defense bonus when protecting an area or person. Thinking about it, that made sense. The Spirit Binding Guards were the tomb keepers of the underground palace back then. The last skill was called Lingering Resentful Spirit, which applied negative states to targets within 5 meters after death. They hadn't seen this skill in the underground palace, because they had killed them from a distance. Whether it was useful would need to be verified in the future. Looking at the rather exposed-looking Spirit Binding Guards, Fang Hao began crafting equipment for them. He found the Storm Iron set blueprint and began production. Currently, the best set in his hands was the Temple Guard set, but the fine iron it required was not yet suitable for large-scale deployment. The Storm Iron set, on the other hand, only required 2 pieces of fine iron for the breastplate, while the rest were common materials. It consumed less. Clatter. A large number of sets appeared out of thin air, scattered across the ground. 1 set for each person, Fang Hao said. The Spirit Binding Guards moved into action, picking up the equipment from the ground and putting it on themselves. Fang Hao continued by finding the Fine Iron Scimitar. Fine Iron Scimitar. Cast Iron Block 5. Fine Iron 3. Tough Leather 1. Production quantity 1. Hundredfold amplification triggered. Obtained 101 Fine Iron Scimitars. The scimitars appeared, and without needing Fang Hao's command, the Spirit Binding Guards picked up all the scimitars and hung them at their waists. All right, go find Commander Dimitrika. He will assign you your respective tasks. Additionally, I will build houses for you to live in. You can rest there when you have no tasks, Fang Hao said. Thank you, Lord, the group of Spirit Binding Guards said with a bow. At the same time, the loyalty of all the Spirit Binding Guards increased by 5 to 8 points. This was the same as with the skeleton tailors and skeleton goldsmiths recruited earlier. Once they had souls, they became more similar to living troop types. Having loyalty meant you had to consider things more thoroughly. If you couldn't maintain high loyalty, they wouldn't be as useful as ordinary undead warriors without intelligence. It depended on how one considered the matter. At the same time, one had to be careful that loyalty didn't drop too low. Otherwise, it was very likely that desertion or slacking off would occur, or they might even stab you in the back. The Spirit Binding Guards left together, and Fang Hao also headed to the Undead residential area. The building clusters for the tailors and blacksmiths had been built over there. He chose an open space, built several rows of residential buildings, and directly upgraded the buildings to level 9. By the time he returned to the Lord's Manor, Air had already prepared dinner. It was as lavish as a banquet, filling the entire long table. Tonight, there were quite a few people eating together. It was a gathering after his return. Besides Fang Hao, Air, and Njia, there were Dimitrika, a seedy, lowly, and the newly joined young mother, Hiyue. Hiyue was someone Fang Hao had rescued from the Life-Takers bandits. At that time, she had only a breath left and nearly died in the dungeon. Once she woke up, she wanted to leave with Fang Hao, mentioning that she was a senior accountant and could be of use. When she first arrived, Hiyue had actually regretted it a bit. The territory was filled with skeletons inside and out. When those bunny girls hung out laundry, there would be skeletons holding wooden basins beside them. She was dumbfounded. She had nightmares for several days straight, but as time passed, she gradually accepted it. Moreover, her daughter, who was still in swaddling clothes, seemed to be braver than her. Seeing skeletons on patrol, the baby would giggle. If Hiyui tried to hide, the daughter would cry, but she would laugh upon seeing a skeleton. Slowly, she stopped being afraid. Usually, she would also command skeletons to do tasks like fetching water or taking out the trash. Gradually, just like those rabbit maids, she always had a skeleton follower behind her. Dinner ended. Fang Hao called several heroes over for a small meeting. During the period when he was away and Rochuan and the other heroes were supporting Dong Jieyue, the general guarding the main city was Blackthorn. Blackthorn's tier wasn't high, but his attributes included city defense skills. In this main city guarded by layers of undead, Blackthorn was capable of the job. Once several skeleton heroes also came over, Fang Hao directly began today's meeting. Dimitrika will be responsible for the main city's defense, with Blackthorn assisting. Increase the personnel for the surrounding patrol teams, and especially do not neglect aerial reconnaissance. This point was to guard against Silverwing City's investigations. According to the news sent by Tavik, the council had already begun to notice this place and would likely arrange personnel to conduct reconnaissance. It was basically impossible to hide and remain undiscovered, but it would also be very difficult for the enemy to obtain core intelligence. With millions of his troops stationed here, if he let them in, wouldn't that be an absolute embarrassment? Yes, Lord. Also, I hope the number of spirit-binding guards can be appropriately increased to better defend the city, Dimitrika said. That's fine. Tell me the number when the time comes, and I'll go recruit them. Very well, Lord. Fang Hao turned his gaze back to Asidi and Njia, continuing, Asidi and Njia, take some time to train the maids in the territory. Teach them horsemanship and combat techniques to improve their physical fitness. Yes, Lord. Sure. I'll teach them some secret techniques I've recently researched, and Jia was quite willing. Having the Blackstone training ground could increase orc training experience by 10%. Now that they were back, it was a good time for Asidi and Njia to teach the rabbit maids together. They were all so delicate. They would have no ability to resist if they encountered danger in the future. After assigning the heroes tasks, he finally turned his gaze to Hiyue. After this period of recuperation, Hiyue's condition had recovered well. Her skin was fair, and her hair no longer looked as malnourished as before. She wore linen clothes and held her child in her arms. Hiyue, how many people do you have under you learning accounting now? Fang Hao asked. Hiyue didn't expect to be asked suddenly and immediately said, 5 people, 3 rabbit people girls, and 2 fox people girls. How are the results? They have to start from basic arithmetic. They are currently learning. Hiyue hesitated for a moment before speaking. This reminded Fang Hao. Those who could write were a minority, let alone calculating or keeping accounts. He had planned to quickly train a batch of accountants to verify the taxes sent from each city every year. The gold coins sent from each city now were very difficult to verify, especially the orcs and trolls. They had money, but no ledgers. If you asked how much money there was, which industry had the highest income in the city, or how much money there was, they would only shake their heads and say they didn't know, but that it was all here anyway. But it seemed now that forming an accounting team to go to each city was still some distance away. Fang Hao thought for a while and said, all right, I understand. I'll think of a way when the time comes to recruit a batch of people to learn from you together. By the way, are these 5 people quick learners? Hiyue opened her mouth, paused slightly, and then said, they are all very smart. It's just that they started late, so they need to learn slowly. She wanted to say the fox girls learned faster, but with air present, she forced the words back down. That's good. Fang Hao nodded. Feeling that there was nothing else, he said to everyone, I have nothing else. Everyone, go back and rest. You can carry out the tasks tomorrow. Everyone stood up. Yes, Lord. Then, they all turned and left. Everyone departed. Fang Hao soaked in the hot spring, letting out a comfortable groan. After being in Silverwing City for so long, he could finally soak in the hot spring once to drive away his exhaustion. Because it was autumn, Fang Hao had increased the height of the walls a bit more. Soaking in the hot spring, he didn't feel any chill. Instead, it was extremely comfortable. The hot spring was very quiet today. Only Air sat kneeling on the side, listening to Fang Hao talk about his experiences along the way, occasionally putting fruit from the plate into his mouth. She was as obedient as a young wife who hadn't yet been married off. And Jia, Loli, and the other maids were in the hall discussing new clothes and learning how to use cosmetics. Everyone was happy to receive gifts. The loyalty of the rabbit maids had basically all reached 100 points, with the lowest reaching 98. Master, why don't we have a child? Air was wearing a casual long dress today, revealing her fair jade-like arms and slender, beautiful legs, sitting beside Fang Hao and asking softly. Fang Hao looked at her curiously. Seeing He Yue's child made you want one too? Air's face instantly turned red, but she eventually nodded. Actually, Fang Hao was also a bit curious. He and Air lived together, so logically they should have had a child by now. Could he be sick? That couldn't be. Having devoured a godhead, his constitution should be above that of humans. Air didn't seem like it either, and besides, Jia and Little White hadn't gotten pregnant either. Unable to figure it out, Fang Hao stopped thinking about it. With a slight smile, he pulled Air into the water, his hands reaching into her floating clothes, and said softly, "Then let's work hard and strive to have a few more." The next morning, Fang Hao woke up in bed and moved the slender leg on his waist to the side. He gave a big stretch. Air was still resting. After a short separation, the two had tossed and turned until very late. Even on Air's rabbit ears, a few finger marks had been left from last night's indulgence. The cleaning and breakfast in the Lord's manor no longer actually needed Air to be responsible for them. Sleeping in, or even waking up naturally, was no problem. Fang Hao didn't disturb her. After a simple wash, he got up and left the room. He re-evaluated the territory's planning, He Yue's students, and the workers needed for Li Rong's factory. He needed a population that he could keep in his own hands. He thought about it seriously. From his storage space, he took out a communicating conch shell and placed it to his lips. "Oh, dear friend, I need a batch of smart and honest rabbit folk or fox people here. I wonder if you have any stock over there." After speaking, he set it aside and waited. Before long, the communicating conch shell received an equally greasy reply. "Oh, my friend, I am very happy to receive your message. I will go check right now to see if I have the supply you need." On the other end of the communicating conch shell was a slave trader from the orc tribe he hadn't contacted in a long time. The rabbit maids and fox maids currently cleaning the territory were all bought from this slave trader initially. Later, the territory developed rapidly, and they no longer lacked manpower. So, they stopped purchasing slaves from the slave trader. This time, he planned to buy more rabbit people and fox people to serve as labor for the factory Li Rong was building, and to select the clever ones to learn accounting from He Yue. The reason for still purchasing rabbit people and fox people was not only because these two races were docile and intelligent. More importantly, those who came as slaves were easier to control and more obedient. Only if the number of rabbit people and fox people was insufficient would he consider filling the gaps with humans. If humans were chosen, he would have to consider reconnaissance from Silverwing City. After waiting a moment, the slave trader's voice came through the communicating conch shell again. "Dear human friend, I just checked the recently captured slaves. There are over 20 rabbit race women and fox race women. If you wish to change your taste, I also have some decent rabbit race men available for a cheap sale. Since we are old friends, I naturally won't ask for too much." The slave trader's tone was as oily as ever. He was imitating the tone and expression of a human merchant according to orc understanding. Fang Hao felt somewhat disappointed after hearing the other party. Only a little over 20 people in total. This was far too few compared to his plan. After thinking about it, he decided to ask for the price first. "What's the price? There's no shortage of refugees in winter. If the price is right, I can patronize your business," Fang Hao said into the communicating conch shell. After a pause, the slave trader said, "Of course. When have I ever given you too high a price? Women are 8 warfire coins. Men are 5. How about that? This is already a very fair price." Fang Hao thought for a moment and stopped a passing rabbit girl. He said softly, "How much did you cost when I bought you?" The rabbit girl was startled, thought for a moment, and then replied, "Master, you spent 10 warfire coins to buy me. I heard very clearly at the time. You took out a bag of gold coins and bought the 42 of us." That was the largest purchase Fang Hao had ever made. In an instant, the gloomy city was filled with vitality. Right, I remember now. Fang Hao slapped his forehead, recalling the incident. The maid smiled, saw that Fang Hao had nothing else to do, curtsied, and went back to her work. It was evident that the maids were in a good mood today. They were still unskilled at using cosmetics, but every one of them looked delighted. Wearing the newly distributed clothes, they even skipped lightly as they walked. Recalling the previous price, Fang Hao decided to haggle a bit more. He picked up the communicating conch shell and said, "Before, You orcs would either kill the rabbit men or use them as hard laborers. Now you sell them to me for 5 warfire coins, and you are still making a profit. Give me a reasonable price, and we will continue to cooperate in the future." The other side fell into a brief silence again, then spoke with an air of reluctant sacrifice. Fine. Then women are 7, men are 4. It's only because we are friends. Damn it. After all that, they only dropped by 1 coin. Of course, Fang Hao didn't plan to continue haggling with him. He said directly, "Fine, I'll take them all, but I need more slaves, both male and female. Do you have any channels?" The reply this time was quick. "Really? Then approximately how many people do you need?" "Around 600 or so. A few more is fine too," Fang Hao replied. "Heavens, my honored friend, please wait a moment. I will immediately inform our clan leader of this news." "Good. I'll wait for your good news." After the call, the communicating conch shell fell silent. The slave trader must have gone to inform their clan leader. Among the orc races, factions capable of capturing slaves everywhere generally held considerable power. Otherwise, they would have been wiped out long ago. There was no news from this side. However, faint footsteps sounded from upstairs. Air, wearing her nightgown, slowly came downstairs while rubbing her eyes. Seeing Fang Hao sitting downstairs, her still slightly dazed face immediately broke into a bright smile. She walked downstairs to his side and immediately sat down in his lap. She said softly, "Master, why are you up so early?" "I didn't even notice." Air was much bolder now than before. Previously, she would never have acted so intimately in front of the maids. "I saw you sleeping soundly, so I didn't wake you." Then he whispered in her ear, "Last night, you were too wild. It's normal to be tired." Air's face instantly flushed red, and she cautiously glanced at the maid nearby. Seeing that the other party hadn't noticed, she spoke in a soft, sweet voice. "Did Master like it?" "I liked it." Hee. Air smiled happily, kissed his cheek, and then got up and left. Not long after Air left, breakfast was served. Air went upstairs again and woke up in Jia, who was still sleepy-eyed. And Jia's eyes were half closed, looking as if she were sleepwalking. The Red General, standing proudly on her shoulder, was pulled downstairs by Air. After a simple breakfast, the communicating conch shell placed nearby sounded a notification again. Fang Hao picked it up and held it to his ear. A strange voice speaking in orc language sounded. "Are you sure you have enough money to buy over 600 slaves?" Without needing to guess, this must be the clan leader the slave trader mentioned. An orc race whose survival depended on selling slaves. The clan leader must also be a ruthless orc. "Money is not an issue. Can you gather that many people?" Fang Hao replied immediately. "I have 2 rabbit people and fox people tribes in my hands. They are having a hard time surviving the winter here and are looking for a master to take them in. Besides that, I can procure deer people, but the price will be a bit higher. Do you need them?" The orc clan leader continued to ask. It seemed the other party had quite a few resources on hand. "Are the deer people intelligent?" "Intelligent, and their appearance conforms to your human aesthetic. I feel you should be very interested." The orc stated affirmatively. Was there some misunderstanding in what he said? "Okay, how much?" Fang Hao continued to ask. "Deer people women are 15 warfire coins. Men are 8 warfire coins. And the elderly and children are 2 warfire coins." "Fine, I agree. When can you deliver them?" There was a brief silence on the other end. The voice switched back to that oily slave trader. "Generous friend, you must have also heard that Copper Bull has taken over Tasco Orc City. He was previously the commander at Manhwa Market, and he seems to have some issues with us. Our convoy cannot bring hundreds of people through that city, so we can only conduct the transaction east of Tasco Orc City." After conquering Tasco Orc City, Fang Hao handed its management over to Copper Bull. The nearby orc tribes had all been guided toward friendly relations. No one dared to casually plunder and start wars anymore. At the same time, patrol teams were stationed at the border. It was difficult for large groups of people to pass through the Tasco Orc City border. If discovered, they would be attacked. Fang Hao thought for a moment and said, "I know Copper Bull. I will inform him about this transaction in advance. You can bring the slaves directly to Tasco Orc City, and you won't be attacked." "Oh, really?" Commander Copper Bull is a very strict city lord. The slave trader confirmed again. "Really, you can try it at the border. If they let you pass, you can come in. By the way, when can you arrive at Tasco?" The slave trader replied, "It will take at least 3 days. I will notify you using the communicating conch shell then." "Oh, right." Our clan leader said that for the payment from the transaction, they hope to exchange it for some weapons produced by your humans. "Weapons?" Fang Hao's eyebrows twitched. "What a good thing. You are too kind. What kind of weapons do you want? Fang Hao asked. Preferably green quality. Swords or armor are fine. They can offset the required warfire coin upon arrival. Understood. I'll wait for your good news. After setting the time, the two ended the call. Outside the Lord's manor, and Jia stood with her hands on her hips, the Red General perched on her shoulder. Like a great general, she looked seriously at the group of rabbit girls and fox girls below, who were all chattering. Once everyone was gathered, she said loudly, "Quiet down, stop chatting." When the maids quieted down, she continued, "Fang Hao said you are all too weak. Starting today, Asidi and I will train you, making you as brave and healthy as I am, unafraid of enemies." Gee, the Red General flapped its wings and chirped along. The maids below looked at each other, and finally all turned to look at Air, who was also standing in the crowd. "Listen to Njia," Air said softly. The Blackstone training ground had long been built. Fang Hao had also given them potions and made them train, but the maids' rank progression remained very slow. It seemed that this time they needed to get serious, letting Njia and Asidi start training them. Njia was fine. They weren't afraid of her straightforward personality. Asidi was always stern and unsmiling, which made them a little scared. Seeing that no one spoke, Njia continued, "All right, now follow me and jog around the Blackstone training ground. Red General, you stay at the back. If anyone slacks off, give a shout, and I'll spank their bottoms." "Gee," the Red General chirped. Then, it led the group of maids toward the Blackstone training ground. Inside the room, Fang Hao had set the time with the slave trader. He walked out of the room, came to the lounge chair in the backyard, lay down, soaked up the sun, and watched everyone chatting and fooling around in the Lord's Book regional channel. Besides a few who were starting to prepare for winter and exchange supplies, more people were just idly chatting and flirting with girls. "Half a bed for rent. Since I am a boy and prefer cleanliness, the tenant must be a girl under 45. Interested parties, please send photos for private chat. Damn, the upstairs neighbor is wild. I'm also a boy, the especially tender kind. Squeeze me and I can ing for a long time. Looking for a mother figure to take care of me." Uffed. Fang Hao spat it all out. What was going on? Why was the atmosphere in the channel so weird today? If you all act like this, won't the Qing dynasty perish? After watching for a while, he still felt something was off. Scrolling up through the chat history, Fang Hao finally understood what had happened in the channel. It was because a female lord who was developing quite well had supported a younger male lord. The two had been frequently showing off their affection in the channel recently. They were already living together now. Fang Hao was also curious and wanted to know what the two looked like. He set the display message and scrolled up for a while longer. Finally, he found a group photo they had posted. The woman looked to be nearly 40, but her temperament was outstanding. She was a beautiful Andy. The man in the photo looked to be in his early 20s, probably just out of university. The woman was wearing light makeup, which felt like cosmetics produced by Li Rong's side. The two were leaning close together, making a victory sign. In the channel, most people's lives had not yet reached the point of having enough food and clothing. Being kept by a beautiful woman, eating soft rice without worrying about future security, made many people envious. This led to the matchmaking messages appearing in the channel. After a while, the passionate matchmaking messages gradually calmed down as they received few replies. New messages gradually began to appear in the channel. Selling blue armor. Only this one piece. Selling cheap. Brothers interested, private message me. Buying leather. Does anyone have spare leather they can sell to me? Buying cotton. Buying fur for keeping warm. Private message with price. Does anyone sell glass? How are you solving the window problem? Winter is coming soon. People will freeze to death. Glass. Why don't you ask who installed air conditioning? How many people can produce glass now? Even if they can, they use it for themselves or their troops. They won't put it up for sale. Use leather to seal the windows. Although it's a bit dark, the wind blocking effect is quite good. I remember, someone produced glass before, right? Why did I forget? Nonsense, no one has glass. The city lord's manor of the level 10 native city near me isn't even using glass yet. How could we possibly have glass? That makes sense. What level are your cities? The highest shouldn't be much worse than the native cities, right? The highest I know of has reached level 11. I don't know if it's the highest. What about Master Fang Hao? Master Fang Hao hasn't spoken in a long time. I wonder what level he is. Having passed the initial period, I feel that Master Fang Hao's advantage shouldn't be great anymore. Perhaps his territory level is no longer the highest. That's possible too. Everyone started discussing, chiming in one after another. Fang Hao looked at the conversation in the channel and had no intention of commenting. but he was somewhat surprised by the speed of others' development. He immediately opened the Lord's book to check his territory level. Level 10 Lordstone Fortress. He was still level 10. Someone had already upgraded to level 11. This was only what was publicly known. It was unclear if there were others who hadn't announced it. The first transmigrator to complete the level 5 upgrade would receive a special reward from the system. He couldn't let someone else take this reward. After thinking this through, Fang Hao sat up from the lounge chair. After stretching, he walked directly out of the Lord's Manor to the front gate. Level 10 Lordstone Fortress. Upgrade materials required. Tough wood 30,000, stone bricks 20,000, fine stone bricks 7,500, marble flooring 1,200, iron 2,500, cast iron block 1,200, metal parts 1,200, terracotta tile 5,000. Actually, Fang Hao had long gathered enough materials. He just hadn't had time to upgrade. Since no one was in the Lord's Manor, he directly chose to upgrade. Light enveloped the stone fortress. It began to expand bit by bit. When the light faded, the stone fortress was completed. Level 11 Lordstone Castle. Upgrade required. Tough wood 35,000, stone bricks 28,000, fine stone bricks 8,200, marble flooring 1,500, iron 3,000, cast iron block 1,500, metal parts 1,800, terracotta tile 5,500. The upgrade requirements are still met. After all, they had been accumulating materials for nearly 2 months, and the undead skeletons were being produced continuously. The amount of materials is enough for me to complete another upgrade. Raise your level to 12. At this point, he was certain that even transmigrators had their own opportunities, but no one could surpass level 12. His skeletons are produced and processed 24 hours a day. Even the most ruthless capitalist can't be as ruthless as him. No one could collect and produce faster than him. Moreover, his own territory also includes the Bloody Mountains and the Cold Wind Mountains, 2 huge quarrying and iron or mining areas. That's something no one else can compare to. The light enveloped Lord's Manor once again, and this time the upgrade took an hour and a half. Not wanting to just wait there, they headed to the Blackstone training ground to check on Maid's training progress. From afar, one could hear a slap slap sound coming from ahead, and Maid's tearful cries. Because of the buildings blocking the way, Fang Hao took 2 quick steps. Heads peered over the buildings. Then I saw 3 maids lying on a stone chair, their little bottoms sticking out. And Jia, holding a tree branch, fiercely whipped his buttocks. Maids cried out in pain as he was being whipped, his flesh trembling. If you sneak food from behind again, I'll spank your butts, and then tell Fang Hao so she can kick you out. Ahead, maids could only let out a few cries of pain. Upon hearing that Fang Hao was to drive them away, Samran's face instantly turned deathly pale. He immediately said, "And Jia, don't tell Master that you've forgotten that I was the one who played with you before. Please, don't tell Master." And Jia was just trying to scare them, still with a cold face. "Then train hard. I won't tell you. A CD will tell you what to do later. Just train hard, and everything will be fine." "Okay, we understand. We'll definitely train hard," Maid said, her voice trembling with tears. "All right, go ahead." The 3 of them immediately got up, rejoined the training ground, and began training with everyone else. And Jia also returned to the training ground. He began practicing boxing with a group of maids. Each punch was accompanied by a series of ha sounds, but the momentum wasn't very strong. Nearby, several Earth Spirit maidens, their bodies bulging with muscles, were commenting and pointing. He shook his head from time to time at Maids' flashy but ineffective moves. Fang Hao glanced at it from afar, but didn't go over. I took a detour to visit Skeleton Tailor, Skull Goldsmith, and other artisans, which was a way of saying hello. After going around in circles, we returned to Lord's Manor. The upgrade has been completed. We arrived at the level 12 Lordstone Fortress. Level 12 Lordstone Fortress. Lord Fang Hao. Abilities. Production/gathering plus 6%. Troop type movement plus 6%. All attributes plus 7%. Existing buildings. Level 10 Catacombs. Level 10 Stables. Appointed official titles. Copper Bull City. Telok. Cold Wind City. Skullcrusher. Town North City. Blackthorn. Prawl. Tavik. Blood Fortress. Lorana and Tobias. Web Weaver Camp. Domina. Unnamed. Zhongbin. Unnamed. Fulei. Unnamed. Dongjie. Unnamed. Kong Yongd. Note. Core buildings of the territory. Upgrade materials required. Tough wood 40,000. Stone bricks 32,000. Fine stone bricks 8,800. marble flooring 2,000, iron 3,500, cast iron block 2,000, metal parts 2,200, terracotta tile 5,000. After level 12, the area of Lord's Manor has been increased once again. Fang Hao and his group, living in Lord's Manor, only occupied 3 rooms. Each of the other heroes has their own separate manor and does not live in Lord's Manor. It is indeed quite empty. In addition to the expansion of Lord's Manor's area, its associated abilities have also been increased. Data collection and troop-type movement, as well as properties, have all been improved. It's not bad. After finishing everything, Fang Hao went to the stables, boarded the giant lizard, and headed to the glass factory area outside the city. On our side, Lord's Manor, including the hero's mansion and the maid's quarters, have all been fitted with glass panels. But the other subordinate cities do not yet have glass. The chat in the channel just now reminded Fang Hao. With winter approaching, having windows in your living space is still very important. They went straight to the glass factory. The labor skeletons are already working enthusiastically. Upon seeing Fang Hao approaching, they didn't pause in their movements at all. It was as if he didn't exist. Fang Hao glanced at the glass factory, which was operating normally. His gaze then turned to the makeshift warehouse not far away. The warehouses were built very simply, consisting of wooden stakes and thatched huts, arranged in rows. Now, at a glance, all 5 warehouses are filled with glass panels, as well as various glass bottles and glass covers. No one is taking care of it, and it's been raining for a while now. Throughout the warehouse, the glassware was covered in mud, as if it had been pulled out of a ditch. The piles on top were also splattered with mud. Fang Hao glanced at it briefly. A message was sent in the territory channel. Zhang Bin, Dong Jieyue, Fu Lei, Su Yang, Lan Yang, Li Rong. Each of you will receive 4 glass plates. The rest of you who want glass plates will receive 2 Warfire coins for each plate. Reselling within the channel is not allowed. The number of people in the territory channel is now much larger than before. Later, many more transmigrators joined the territory through other people. There are already a lot of people. The individuals Fang Hao specifically named were all people he had personally recruited and who had each played different roles in the development process. These words immediately caused an uproar in the previously quiet territory channel. Zhang Bin, thank you, boss. You're awesome, boss. Fu Lei, thank you, boss. You're awesome, boss. Lan Yang, thank you, boss. You're awesome. Just one more question. What is a glass panel? Is it the glass on a window? Zhang Bin, yes. If there is a glass panel, it can be added directly when making the window. If not, all that will be made is a wooden frame with an empty center. Lan Yang, oh, great. It's getting cold now. I was thinking of using beast hide to seal the windows, but now I don't need to. Xiu Yu, I'm envious. I want to buy glass panels and make windows. Zhu Yi, I want to buy it too. Fang Hao, where can I buy it? In fact, the price Fang Hao set for 2 Warfire coins was practically a freebie. For those who have lived to this day, opening just 1 treasure chest is enough to fill Lord's Manor's windows. That's why he made it clear that once purchased, the item cannot be sold within the channel. Otherwise, someone will definitely take advantage of the situation, buy it from me at a low price, and then resell it on the channel. It's a simple business opportunity that many people can think of. Fang Hao replied, if you want to buy, please message me privately. The quantity is limited, and each person can only have more than 8 yuan. We will replenish the supply little by little when production increases. Zhu Yi. Okay, Fang Hao, I want 8 yuan. I want 8 yuan too. One private message after another came in, and Fang Hao accepted them, and then placed the glass panels on the designated shelves in turn. The others quickly accepted the situation and installed the equipment in their own homes. 8 glass panels cannot actually solve the problems of each territory. To provide glass for your troop types and residents, the amount of glass required is enormous. Given the current production volume, it is unlikely. All we can do is have them seal up the windows at Beast Hide and gradually increase the number next year. On the other side, inside a Beast Hide tent at Boffing Mountain, Dong Jieyue took off her helmet and shook her sweat-soaked hair. Today, we have captured the last 2 of the 12 fortresses of Boffing Mountain. The dwarves' resistance was even more stubborn. The 2 sides spat flames at each other, and the battlefield was covered with gunpowder-smelling smoke, causing the earth to tremble incessantly. At this moment, it felt as if we had gone from the era of cold weapons to the era of hot weapons. Individual human resources seemed weak and powerless. Outside the door, all the heroes and generals had entered the tent. Dong Jiayue spread the map out on the wooden table. He said softly, "Tonight, we'll attack the city." The finger gently tapped the locations of the two fortified cities below. The dwarf Belerga frowned, flicked his thick beard, and hurriedly said, "So soon? Our men have just fought them all day, and now they're going to attack the city tonight." "Attack? Our troop type is the undead. They're not afraid of getting tired or dying. They're the ones who are afraid of getting tired. Let's attack tonight and not give them a chance to eat," Dong Jiayue said firmly. The other heroes did not comment. They are undead heroes, so naturally they don't care when to attack. Just be careful about your own safety. Now, the dwarves' weaponry is becoming increasingly powerful, and this is becoming more and more apparent to Spencer, the undead red dragon hero, when he leads the bone dragon in an aerial assault. The crossbow bolts fired from the ground into the air were as dense as raindrops. To unleash a breath attack on the ground, one must dive while braving crossbow bolts. When they returned, both Spencer and Bone Dragon were carrying serious injuries. Therefore, Dong Jiayue directly changed its strategy from a surprise attack to a war of attrition. "Anyway, we don't need to rest. We can keep fighting all the time, every day. I don't believe they don't need to sleep either." Belerga stroked his beard, but ultimately said nothing. Rochuan then asked, "Should we attack both fortresses simultaneously, or just one at a time?" Dong Jiayue said directly, "Rochuan will lead 1,000,000 to attack this fortress. Black Sword will lead the other fortresses to hold them back. Spencer will lead the Bone Dragon to launch surprise attacks and harass when the opportunity arises, and Belerga will lead the dwarves to repair all the equipment and keep it in good working order." "Good, understood." All the heroes nodded and left the tent again. Less than half an hour later, the undead army launched another attack, with cannon fire echoing and the earth trembling. Dong Jiayue sat inside the tent. "We traded for meat patties and grilled fish from the channel and started eating." The plates and glasses on the table trembled up and down with the sound of artillery fire. At this moment, the tent was pulled open. Yang Xiaolan, the city lord under his command, glanced at him discreetly. Upon discovering Dong Jiayue inside the tent, he smiled and walked in. "Sister Jiayue, have you checked the territory channel?" Yang Xiaolan sat down beside her. "No, what's wrong? Did Lan Yang perform another amazing skill?" Dong Jiayue asked while eating. "No, it's Fang Hao who's giving away glass plates in the channel. You're one of them. He's giving away 4 to everyone. If the others want to buy, it's 2 Warfire coins per plate," Yang Xiaolan explained from the side. "Oh, really?" Dong Jiayue immediately opened the Lord's book to take a look. Sure enough, I saw what Fang Hao said in the channel, and he even sent her 4 coins, which she could trade over at any time. Now that the weather is getting cool, this glass plate is a really good thing. What about you guys? Did you buy any? Dong Jiayue asked Yang Xiaolan. Yang Xiaolan shook his head. "No, even if we buy it now, we can't carry it with us. Besides, everyone else is busy making equipment for the soldiers and doesn't know about this yet." She paused for a moment and continued, "I'm afraid if we're too late, others will buy them all. Jiayu, you have a good relationship with Fang Hao. Ask him to save some for us, and we'll buy them when we get back." Dong Jiayue thought about it and felt it made sense. Yang Xiaolan and her team belong to transmigrators under her command. When it comes to good stuff, you have to think about your own people too. Don't let Zhang Bin's men buy it all up, leaving our own people to freeze in the winter. "Okay, I'll talk to Brother Hao. We've been working hard for the development of the territory, so it wouldn't be right if we weren't given any." Dong Jiayue took another big bite of the pancake. "That's right." Dong Jiayue immediately opened Lord's book and began contacting Fang Hao. First, they reported the situation at Boffing Mountain. Then they requested ammunition, supplies, and a large number of detonators. Finally, the topic of the glass plate was brought up. Fang Hao naturally left some for them, and there were already extras in the warehouse, so there was no question of whether to leave any or not. Yang Xiaolan waited to the side and saw Dong Jiayue close the Lord's book. He hurriedly asked, "What did Boss Fang Hao say?" Dong Jiayue said confidently, "It's all settled. Not only did they leave some for us, but they also gave each of us 2 extra glass plates." Yay, Jiayue really knows how to make a name for herself. That's right. 3 days later, in the blink of an eye, after breakfast, Fang Hao, along with Asidi and Njia, traveled directly to Tasco Orc City via the teleportation screen. I spoke with Copper Bull about some recent developments. When Copper Bull learned that Fang Hao wanted to train people who could keep accounts and calculate, he insisted on including a few young members of the Bull clan in the program. Fang Hao was somewhat stunned. The Minotaur tribe, regardless of gender, are all strong and powerful, with muscles that gleam red all over their bodies. Moreover, it seems that he is better at strength than learning. But since Copper Bull was so proactive, Fang Hao couldn't refuse. It wouldn't hurt to have two bull-headed men learning together. Okay, pick two smart ones to come and learn from me first, and see how it goes. Fang Hao nodded in agreement. All right, the children in our clan have been very smart these past 2 years. I don't think they're much worse than those human merchants. Copper Bull slammed his hand on the chair and shouted excitedly. And at this time, Bull-headed man was outside the door. Guards walked over quickly. He glanced at the shouting chieftain and said, Lord, Chieftain, the Sawtooth slave caravan has arrived. Copper Bull's gaze instantly fell on Fang Hao. He knew that Fang Hao had come today for the slave trade group. Otherwise, he wouldn't have allowed slave trader to enter the Tusco border. Arrange for them to go to deserted places, Fang Hao said. Copper Bull thought for a moment and said, Don't let them into the city. Go to the temporary camp on the west side of the city. Bring more people with you, and don't let them cause trouble. Yes, Chieftain. Bull-headed man guards nodded and withdrew. Fang Hao and Copper Bull also got up one after the other. He walked towards the door. Soon, Fang Hao's men arrived with truckloads of manufactured weapons and armor. They appeared at the agreed-upon temporary camp. Outside the camp was a low wall made of a mixture of stone and mud. Beyond the wall, one could see several wooden buildings and a number of orcs. All around them were fully armed bull-headed men, coldly watching the slave traders. When Fang Hao and the others appeared, sitting in the flatbed cart, from afar, a well-dressed orc wearing gold chains and rings could be seen rushing towards them. He kept shouting, Dear and noble friend, you have finally arrived. You have no idea how many difficulties we went through to find a sufficient number of slaves in order to fulfill your request. Fang Hao has some difficulty recognizing orcs of his own race. Aside from their distinctive features, they all look pretty much the same. But upon hearing this tone and manner of speaking, this confirmed the other party's identity. It was the orc slave trader with whom he had been cooperating. It seems that his status within the clan has been elevated. This outfit makes him look more like a nouveau riche. He hurried to the carriage, holding onto it with one hand, and jogged along while muttering to himself. This proves how much effort they put into this deal. When we arrived at the camp entrance, Fang Hao jumped down from the carriage and said, Take me to see the person you found. If I'm not satisfied, I won't pay you. The orc trader immediately patted his chest and said, I'm sure you'll be satisfied, friend. This way, please. After saying that, he led Fang Hao into the camp. Entering the camp, we passed through several dilapidated wooden huts. Then he saw the slave he had mentioned. There were at least 1,000 people gathered here, among whom rabbit folk could be seen. Fox people. There were people of all ages, but most of them were young. The slaves gathered there, without iron cages or any restraints, waiting somewhat uneasily. Did you capture them all? Fang Hao asked as he walked. Slave trader immediately shook his head. Oh, that's not it. Our chieftain is leading us in a reform of the industry and has stopped capturing slaves. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so well behaved here. Industry reform? It's quite rare to hear this from a slave trader. Of course, Fang Hao didn't care about any of this. The tribes in the orc territory were already in disarray. In winter, almost no one hoards food. They hoard weapons. Given this living situation, how would you change careers? What line have you changed to? Fang Hao asked. Hey friend, even though you're smart, powerful, handsome, and rich, you'd never guess this. Slave trader paused, showed off for a moment, and continued. The living conditions are bad for the orcs, while they are stable for the humans, but the slave trade is prohibited, so we plan to open a road. What road? Help the orcs in need and find kind people who are willing to let them stay. Kindness. Fang Hao was slightly taken aback, wondering what those words meant. Then, I suddenly realized that this was just a different name. It sounds like it's at a mid-level. They can make money from both sides. They have connections that allow nobles on the human side who need slaves to buy them. On the orc side, it's also a matter of taking money and helping you build connections. Transmigrators came up with this for you. Slave trader was startled, his eyes darting around. No, we came up with it ourselves. Fang Hao didn't argue with him about these things and continued. This method works? It probably doesn't earn as much as you do capturing slaves. We do capture slaves, but they're all sold to the orcs. We're doing it to the humans the way we just discussed. The method is pretty good. These are the ones we agreed on. Slave trader pointed to the group of slaves beside him. They all entrusted you to sell themselves to human cities? Yes, winter is coming. You have no idea how terrible winters are here. They simply can't survive this winter on their own. Slave trader explained immediately. Fang Hao didn't say anything more. Perhaps this really makes it easier to survive than staying in the orc territory. Have you tallied the number of people and their ages? Fang Hao asked. I've compiled the statistics. Slave trader took out a wooden board with numbers engraved on it. Rabbit folk has 327 members, with women measuring 158 centimeters and men measuring 168 centimeters. The Fox people tribe consists of 472 people, 365 women, and 107 men. Fang Hao shook his head and said to his Sidi beside him, recount these people and calculate the elderly and children separately. Yes, sir. Slave trader was taken aback. What's this? Do you think anyone would buy elderly people and children to take back with them? Well, what do you mean? Slave trader was somewhat puzzled. Fang Hao continued. Either you take it back, or you give it to me for free. If I find it useful, I'll keep it. If not, I'll dispose of it myself. Slave trader certainly cannot take these slaves back with him. And what they said is true. Nobody wants to buy from the elderly and children. Children need to be raised before they can work, which requires a lot of upfront costs. Then we'll do as you say. You can take the elderly and children with you, and leave anything you can use, slave trader said with a smile. Kindness. Before long, the number of people was recounted. There are 42 elderly people and 135 children. The statistics are now complete. Slave trader gave a peculiar look. My friend, we know your needs are quite strong. So in addition to rabbit people and fox people, we have also prepared special goods for you. Fang Hao thought for a moment and concluded that it must be the deer people that the slave-owning chieftain had mentioned before. He was also curious about what the deer man would look like. Where is it? Let me see. This way, please follow me. Slave trader chuckled. The two walked a few more steps. They stopped in front of a wooden house. Slave trader deliberately raised an eyebrow at Fang Hao, then opened the wooden door. Inside the wooden house, 5 deer men can be seen resting on the ground. Their image and rabbit people fox people are clearly different. The upper body is human, with small facial features, a pointed deer head, and a pair of antlers on top of the head. But the lower half of the body is that of a deer, dressed in old linen cloth, with 4 slender deer legs. Her overall appearance is more like the centaur girl discussed in the channel. Oh right, these should be called half-human deer girls. What are you going to do? A petite, delicate-looking deer person asked timidly. My body involuntarily shrank back. These people didn't come here voluntarily, did they? Fang Hao asked slave trader. Unlike his earlier account of the tribe's conversion, slave trader glared at the deer man before continuing with a smile, saying, It's all right. These people have already signed slave contracts. There won't be any danger. Aren't you going to change careers? These deer people tribes were attacked, and we bought them from the victorious tribe. If it weren't for your needs, they would still be doing heavy physical labor until they die of exhaustion and starvation. Slave trader's voice was loud. While explaining to Fang Hao, it's also important to make these deer people understand their current situation. If Fang Hao doesn't want them, their fate will be even worse than it is now when they go back. Sure enough, after listening to slave trader's words, the deer lowered their heads and fell silent. Slave trader continued. There were originally many more deer men, but by the time we arrived, they had already been killed by the orcs, leaving only these few. No wonder the slave-owning chieftain mentioned the old deer man and the child earlier. In retrospect, they were all killed by the time they arrived. The price will remain the same? Constant. Okay, I'll take these. Fang Hao nodded. Thank you for your generosity, my wealthy friend. Now I'll go get you the contract. If you'd like to take this opportunity to experience the life of a deer man, I recommend that deer man. She's the daughter of the deer man chieftain and holds a very high position among the deer man. Slave trader pointed to the deer man girl who had just spoken. The girl's body trembled, and she bit her lower lip tightly, but she didn't say anything. Go get the contract. Okay. Slave trader scurried out of the cabin. Fang Hao followed them out. After obtaining the deer man's contract, Fang Hao then paid the slave traders the corresponding price for weapons and equipment. Wait for the exchange to complete. Slave trader's face showed even greater joy. Honorable friend, if there are any new slaves in the future, may I still contact you? Yes, but I hope it's voluntary. Okay, you are such a kind person. After saying this, slave trader bowed again and left the temporary camp with his men and truckloads of goods. Wait for the slave trader to leave. All the purchased slaves were gathered in the square. They lowered their heads, waiting somewhat uneasily for their new master to speak. There's nothing they can do now but pray that the owner who bought them will be kind and won't make things too difficult for them. After a while, the young human who bought his group walked onto a high platform. He glanced down and said loudly, "All right, everyone, look up." The crowd below, who had been looking down, slowly raised their heads. He looked ahead with a restrained expression. Fang Hao continued, "First of all, you must understand your own identity. You are slaves, and I have the right to decide your life and death." Upon hearing this, everyone's expression turned panicked. "But as long as you work honestly, I can guarantee that you will have enough to eat and wear. More importantly, no one will attack you anymore, and you will be protected by the army." The slaves below looked confused again. We looked at each other, neither of us quite understanding what the other meant. "So, human master, what work do we need to do in exchange for these promises from you?" The one who spoke was the dear woman girl. "She seems to be bolder. What's your name?" Fang Hao asked. "Edith, master." Edith whispered, then lowered her head again. Fang Hao nodded and continued, "I will assign you jobs according to your strengths. If you are smart and good at math, you can learn bookkeeping. If you are good at planting, you will be assigned to grow crops. Even if you feel that you are just average, I will build a factory for you to work in later." Everyone's eyes widened in surprise. Learning how to keep accounts? Building a factory? But what is a factory? But they also realized that the owner's promise seemed pretty good. At least they got what they wanted. They are protected and will be able to survive the winter. Of course, they didn't think Fang Hao was lying to them, because there was no need for that. There's absolutely no need to find such an excuse to deal with them. There was still no one speaking or applause. Fang Hao felt this was pointless, so he simply said, "All right, everyone, follow me back to Tasco Orc City." After saying that, he was escorted by the bull-headed guards. A large group of slaves marched towards Tuskok. During the journey, Fang Hao checked the attributes of the dear woman Edith. Edith, Tier 3. Faction, Orcs. Racial trait, living beings, avoidance. Skills, double shot, moonlight. Inherent abilities, basic archery proficiency, basic spell proficiency. Living beings, this troop type can be healed, is affected by morale, emotions, and other states, and is immune to bone manipulation technique and similar abilities. Double shot. Once the first arrow hits the enemy, a second arrow can be fired immediately. Moonlight, a spell that can accelerate the growth of crops that thrive in moonlight. Description: in the mysterious forest, the deer people are undoubtedly a special race. Sunlight and moonlight represent the difference between their males and females. The male's strength comes from sunlight, while the female prefers nighttime. This difference in their activity times makes mating very complex and difficult. Edith's rank is not high, but her race's abilities are quite unique. It can induce plant growth. Furthermore, they are divided into males and females. Males are for sun-loving crops, meaning they can stimulate the growth of crops that prefer sunlight, while females are for crops that thrive at night. The daytime and nighttime here likely refer to sun-loving and shade-loving. Unfortunately, we couldn't buy any male fawns. They were all female. "Edith," Fang Hao called out to the back. At the back of the group, Edith walked over nervously, her steps heavy. "The deer man is really interesting. I don't know how to clean up after using the toilet." Master, Edith said nervously as she approached. Edith's antlers weren't large. They were just hard protrusions. "Do your other tribesmen also have the ability to grow plants?" Fang Hao glanced behind him and looked at the other deer people on this side. The deer man behind them, his face also filled with worry, gazed at this place from afar. It seemed as if they were afraid Fang Hao would eat Edith up. "Yes, master. The men of the tribe can accelerate the growth of sun-loving crops, while we can accelerate the growth of shade-loving crops," Edith replied softly. "What kind of plants are considered shade-loving?" Fang Hao continued to ask. "Most shade-loving plants grow in forests, canyons, and caves. For example, mushrooms and some of the half-moon grass we use to make soup are shade-loving plants," Edith explained softly. Fang Hao nodded, indicating that he understood. These deer would be quite suitable for growing alchemical herbs. Fang Hao planned a large area of medicinal herb fields in Huiwa Highlands, but the effect was not significant. It's worth considering letting them live there, since that land is too empty and some races are unwilling to migrate to Lorana's territory. "By the way, do you usually go out at night?" Fang Hao recalled the details mentioned in the description. "Females prefer to come out at night." "Yes, master. Sunlight makes us feel weak and uncomfortable, while night makes us feel comfortable," Edith continued to explain. This is truly a unique race. Even though they are the same species, there is such a clear distinction between males and females. Okay, I understand. You'll be in charge of your tribe's people. Make sure they don't wander off along the way. Yes, master. Edith found it easier and easier to say it, and she no longer felt ashamed. It took almost an hour to walk. The main group returned to Tasco Orc City. The slaves, who were dizzy with hunger, were taken away to eat. Fang Hao also found Copper Bull and gave him instructions, asking him to arrange for his men to escort these slaves all the way to his side. Copper Bull agreed. The city where the bull-headed man lived was located to the east of Fang Hao City. While escorting the bull-headed man, they would also send a few young bull-headed men there to learn about bookkeeping and such. It sounds so high class. After everything was arranged, Fang Hao didn't linger. He immediately released the teleportation screen and teleported back within Jia. Return to territory. Air has already prepared dinner. The maids have been lacking energy these past few days. They were so exhausted from the training that they were practically dead. Fortunately, there is a rejuvenating hot spring that can relieve fatigue. Otherwise, after this training, no one would be able to get out of bed the next day. After dinner, Dong Jiayue once again asked Fang Hao for a large number of bullets and detonators. It is clear that the battle is becoming increasingly intense, and ammunition consumption is also increasing. Fang Hao is providing continuous support, while the Boffing Mountain Dwarfs factory is also producing ammunition on a large scale. They also captured a large number of transmigrators and worked day and night to manufacture various devices. For a time, the two sides were constantly competing to see who could consume the most equipment. Before going to bed, soaking comfortably in the hot spring, enjoying the rising steam, washes away the fatigue of the day. She rested her head on Air's lap. Watching Jia and Loli bathe Red General in a wooden tub, I noticed them nearby. Red General, which looked fluffy, appeared much thinner after being soaked in water, like a drowned rat. He was utterly dejected and allowed the two of them to rub him. They would occasionally shout a couple of times to express their protest, and Jia flicked them on the forehead a few times, and then they stopped talking. He stayed still and behaved himself. Bite. At that moment, a private chat notification sounded from Lord's book. It was a message from Lan Yang. Boss Fang Hao, are you there? Lan Yang is a real character, and everyone likes her a lot. She's always making a ruckus, and it seems like she doesn't do anything all day, just staring at the channel 24/7. They can chime in with a few words whenever someone is talking. Yes, what's up, Lan Yang? Boss, there are some bandits running around here again. Can you give me some of your rifle? I'll take some men and take them out. Lan Yang is located within the area of Jinmasidu City. Jinmasidu has never been very strict about managing the surrounding area. There were life-takers imitations before, but now the weather has gotten colder. More bandits have also begun to become active in the Lanyang territory. Since they were all on the same side, Fang Hao wasn't worried about the firearms posing a threat to him. Sure, how much do you want? After a while, Lanyang replied. The other side has quite a few people. Can I have 200 rounds? Fang Hao immediately crafted 200 rifles and traded them to Lanyang via channel. He also instructed, I've sent you the transaction channel. Don't lose it. If this falls into the wrong hands, it could be the death of us. Firearms are very powerful. Fang Hao has now absorbed the divine spark, and his physical attributes have been comprehensively enhanced. But Lan Yang and the others are not an option. If the rifle falls into enemy hands, it could kill them just as easily. Understood? Thanks, boss. Boss, you didn't make me any bullets. Okay, here you go. I'll make it now. Fang Hao then produced a large number of bullets and sent them to her. Lan Yang. Thank you so much, boss. Love you. Before Fang Hao could close the channel, Lan Yang sent another message. He said, Boss, Sister Li Rong asked me to ask her if you've blocked her. No, what's wrong? Fang Hao replied. Lan Yang. Oh, Sister Li Rong said she sent you a message but you didn't reply, so she suspects you deleted her. Fang Hao was helpless. He didn't delete Li Rong, but he set her to do not disturb. This woman is sick. She sends him lewd pictures from time to time, all in various poses and all selfies. On the way back, Jia and Rebecca almost saw us twice. Later, I set her to do not disturb. She'll send it if she wants, and she'll save it. But she won't give any notifications, so she doesn't always think it's someone else reporting something important. Lanyang asked him now, and he thought about it for a moment. She replied, Oh, I made a mistake before. I've corrected it now. If there's anything, I'll just tell her. Lanyang. Understood, boss. In the future, if there are any ferocious wild beasts, Don't kill them. Leave them for me to practice my beast taming skills. Okay, I understand. Thanks, boss. Love you. I ended my chat with Lan Yang. Fang Hao then opened Li Rong's chat window. Sure enough, a whole bunch of white images appeared all at once. Luckily, I was lying on Air's lap. Otherwise, Air would have actually seen these pictures. Li Rong, you were looking for me? Li Rong's voice was full of complaint as she spoke. Humph, I thought you, this big shot, had been blocked by someone. If I hadn't contacted Lan Yang, you probably would have forgotten about me. Fang Hao felt like she was a resentful woman. His words were full of hatred. Fang Hao was equally blunt. You have the nerve to say that? Look at how many lewd pictures you've posted. If I didn't have a do not disturb setting, this lord's book would have become your porn library. Li Rong. Oh, I'm showing you for free, and you're still not satisfied. Countless people are trying to woo me. Is this a matter of whether you want to see it or not? Forget it. I don't have time to talk to you about this. What do you want from me? Don't tell me you've taken new photos again. Li Rong. Humph. I won't show you even if I take the pictures. Amanda is back, and I've finished dealing with things here. When are you going to pick us up and bring us to your place so we can finalize things at the factory? It's been more than half a month since I returned from Silverwing City. The workers we purchased haven't arrived yet, so we can only wait for them to come before bringing them over. Especially for the gold-eating queen, Amanda, staying in Li Rong's city is extremely dangerous. The workers haven't arrived yet. Wait for my message. I'll teleport you two over in a couple of days. Make sure you bring everything you need in advance. Fang Hao replied. Okay, I'll come visit you then. Li Rong continued. All right, I'm not talking to you anymore. I really do have new photos. Do you want to see them? Set messages to do not disturb. 2 days later, Fang Hao got up early to wash and dress. The other maids also got up early and started their morning run under Njia's guidance. You see, Njia doesn't usually get up on her own. If she's allowed to train others, she must get up really early. She's probably the first one to wake up. The maid in charge of cooking chuckled to herself, feeling that her job was good. At least she missed out on some morning exercise. I've had breakfast. Fang Hao then went directly to tailor shop. Winter is coming, and people's needs will change to clothes that can keep them warm. Arrive at the tailor shop area. From afar, you could see a group of tailors busily working. Their tools have changed from spinning wheels to leather-making frames. They are currently processing the leather goods they acquired. Lord, ahead, skeleton tailor Soy walked over quickly and gave a slight bow. The tailor captain, whom he himself promoted, has always done a great job. There are some things that don't even need Fang Hao to tell them. They can be given orders and carried out on their own. Well, Soy, how's the winter clothing coming along? Fang Hao asked as they walked. Soy followed closely behind, respectfully replying, Sir, everyone is working at full capacity to produce. Are there enough raw materials? The leather is being delivered steadily, and the reserves at linen and cotton are also quite sufficient. Everything is going smoothly. The leather was transported from various subordinate cities, especially east of Tasco Orc City. They traded weapons for a large amount of beast hide. These beast hide are worthless to orcs, but they can be very useful to humans. They can be made into clothing and sold to transmigrators and ordinary indigenous people. To avoid a situation like the one Rebecca described, where many people freeze to death every year. Yes, well done. Fang Hao gave a compliment. They went straight to the warehouse next door. Clothes are neatly stacked here. Fur-lined short robe for warmth, fur-lined, long trousers for warmth. Brown fur coats were neatly piled up, filling most of the warehouse. A rough estimate suggests there are over 2,000 items. Actually, clothes made of patchwork fur don't look very good. However, it has the advantage of using less material and being cheaper when sold. The people being sold to were ordinary residents, not nobles. Sir, these are robes made for our own people. The style and fabric are better, Soy reminded him from the side. The adjacent warehouse was pushed aside by Soy. Inside was a long robe, predominantly white. Cotton fleece robes, cotton fleece trousers, and some cotton fleece gloves. My lord, this kind of cotton fabric is more comfortable and lighter to wear, but the reserves of cotton in the territory are not much, and it is also difficult to make, so the number of finished products is not large. Soy explained softly from the side. Cotton is an advanced material for cotton. Cotton has considerable reserves within his territory, but not enough to be squandered at will. Therefore, the quantity is naturally not large. How many can be produced? Soy did the math and replied, We have over 50 pieces now, and warehouse's raw materials should be enough to make over 200 more. Okay, increase the quantity to 100 pieces and then focus on producing ordinary fur clothing. Fang Hao put the robe back in his hand. These things are not important. What matters is that fur can help more people survive. Yes, sir. Yes, I will continue to have people speed up the acquisition of furs, and I will also give you some more manpower later. That's great, sir. Increasing manpower will greatly improve efficiency. Okay, let's go. Let's recruit now. Arrived at tailor shop, Fang Hao directly recruited, bringing the number of skeleton tailors to 1,010. As countless tailors appeared, Soy immediately issued a series of orders. They began assigning tasks to these new recruits. They're spinning yarn, processing leather, and making finished products. It was a lively scene. After recruiting them, Fang Hao also needs to build them houses and provide them with some daily necessities. After everything is dealt with, when Fang Hao returned to Lord's Manor, it was nearly noon. The maids sat by the door, looking like they'd lost their souls, leaning against each other to rest. Her wet hair clung to her forehead and face. The clothes were also a mess. It looked like the whole group had been ruined. Inside the hall, Er ordered someone to bring fruit wine from the cellar and distribute it to everyone. The chilled fruit wine finally gave them a chance to catch their breath. Fang Hao entered the hall and glanced at Er, who was sitting to the side resting and looked somewhat disheveled. He said, "There's no need to rush. Don't tire yourself out." Er smiled and said softly, "I'm not tired. Exercise is good for you too. So what are you practicing this afternoon?" Commander Asidi taught us how to ride horses and how to attack from horseback. That should make things a bit easier, Er said softly. Fang Hao nodded. Some orcs are not good at riding horses. For example, Loli didn't know how to ride a horse before. She relied on her own strength and balance to force herself to ride on the horse. When racing horses with Njia, I was bruised and battered every day at the beginning. Later, I gradually learned how to ride it myself, and I even rode it very well. It's just too small. It doesn't even look as big as a horse's neck. Okay, let everyone eat well these few days. We have plenty of food anyway. Good. After lunch, maids, led by Asidi, then went out of town to practice horseback riding, and the large number of slaves purchased earlier. They arrived at the city under the escort of bull-headed man soldiers. The city gates opened, and a large number of rabbit people, fox people were brought in. Those in front were being urged forward, while behind them, on the flatbed cart, lay dozens of rabbit people who had fainted from fright. Fox people. Seeing this, Fang Hao naturally knew what was going on. He was terrified by the undead near his territory. Fang Hao had placed the undead in the underground Hidden Arms cave, surrounded by skeletons patrolled by Earth Spirit Maidens. Lord, they've all been brought here, but these men fainted as soon as they got close. A bull-headed man reported loudly. Fang Hao nodded. Okay, I understand. Then he glanced down at the group of pale-faced slaves below. She said softly, "Do the rabbit people and the fox people both have village chiefs or leaders?" Soon, rabbit folk, a male rabbit people and a female fox people, took a small step forward. Fang Hao nodded and said, "All right, you two, and Edith, come in with me." Enter the lobby. The three remained very reserved, silent, and simply kept their heads down. I don't know what I'm thinking. Fang Hao pushed out a huge sand table. He said, "Fox people and rabbit people, choose a place nearby to build a village." Both rabbit people and fox people were taken aback upon hearing Fang Hao's words. She thought she had been bought to be used as a sacrifice to the dead, since such things were common among various tribes. But now, the new owners are letting them choose where to build the village. Is the plan to raise them and then sacrifice them little by little? That's terrifying. Master, please spare us. We are willing to undertake heavy work for you. Please do not treat us as sacrifices. The male chieftain of the rabbit people immediately knelt down and pleaded loudly. Upon hearing this, Edith, the Fox Clan chief and Deer Man, also knelt down. He cried loudly and begged for mercy. The sounds from inside the hall carried outside. Swish, swish, swish. Everyone knelt down, and cries of sobbing filled the air. Fang Hao's eyelids twitched, and he glared fiercely at the rabbit people male chieftain, who was the first to kneel down. With that kind of intelligence and audacity, how did he become the clan leader? "Shut up, all of you," Fang Hao shouted. At the same time, he summoned a bull-headed man and said, "Go outside the city and bring air here." "Oh yes, sir," bull-headed man replied and strode off. Not long after, air, covered in sweat, walked back, curiously watching the rabbit people kneeling inside and out. Fox people, their eyes filled with curiosity. Fang Hao said, "Explain to them and let them set up a village nearby. Then I will arrange jobs for them." Air nodded. "Yes, master, leave it to me." Air has experience in this area. In addition, being a rabbit folk himself, he could easily persuade those slaves. Previously, the maids that Fang Hao purchased were all managed by Air. It took about 10 minutes. Air returned and said with a smile, "Master, I've explained it to them, and they won't cry anymore." Fang Hao nodded. "Come with me. These people are too cowardly." Air smiled but didn't say anything. The two returned to the hall. Rabbit folk, fox people, and Edith remained standing in the hall. Fang Hao went directly to the sand table, pointed to the location of his city, and said, "This is my city. You can choose a place nearby to build a village, and I will help you then." This time, it was the female chieftain of the Fox clan who stepped forward. Stepping forward, he first bowed respectfully, then spoke softly. "Respected master, we have chosen this area to establish our village." Fang Hao glanced at the location. "It is located on the west side of my own city, in the middle of Zhongbin City. This area is near a river and can be considered a suitable place for living and farming." Moreover, they were quite thoughtful. Located to the west of Fang Hao, no matter how chaotic things are on the orc side, they can't interfere here. Even if there is danger, Fang Hao's main city will bear the brunt. Of course, Fang Hao didn't care about these things. It was fine to be in this location. The roads were all repaired. The transportation of materials will also be convenient at that time. "All right, now that you've made your choices, let's go together." With that, he led everyone towards Bull-Headed Man. Under the protection of the guards, they headed westward outside the city. "We found a pretty good spot. The terrain is flat, with rivers and forests, which is suitable for the life of fox people and rabbit people." "How is it here?" Fang Hao asked, looking at the Fox clan chief and the rabbit people chief. "Thank you, master. We are very satisfied here," the Fox clan chief said after discussing with the rabbit people chief. "Okay, this way it is." Fang Hao opened Lord's book and started building immediately. The walls were built, and then a large number of houses were constructed. The villages of the Fox people and the rabbit people are separate, but not far apart. This is also to prevent the two races from being different in the future, which could easily lead to conflicts and contradictions over time. They will live separately and manage their own affairs. Under the astonished and incredulous gazes of the slaves, two villages have sprung up, with towering city walls and stone houses that have surpassed their former size. At least a sturdy house can withstand the biting cold wind in winter. "Thank you, master." They all knelt down again in unison. Fang Hao waved his hand, signaling them to get up, and said, "All right, you can all arrange your own housing, and then go to the main city to get your daily necessities." "Yes, master." The two clan chiefs, each leading their own clansmen, entered the village. Housing and jobs were assigned. Such a large village needs to have its work arranged. After allocation is completed, two more squads followed Fang Hao back to the main city to collect supplies. When it's all over, the sky gradually darkened. After dinner, Air and Jia went to soak in the hot springs. Fang Hao sat in the hall. He Yue sat to the side, holding a sleeping baby in her arms. Fang Hao said, "This time, I brought back quite a few rabbit people and fox people. You can select some of the smart ones who are good at accounting and train them so that they can be useful next year." Today, the slaves wept collectively outside Lord's manor, and He Yue heard it. If it weren't for seeing Fang Hao, she thought something had happened to Fang Hao. He gave a gentle smile and said, "Okay, I'll go over tomorrow morning and pick some people to come over. Yes, there are still some children over there. Bring them all over and teach them from the beginning. Then I'll see if I can find any teachers specializing in any area. Maybe we can open a school or something." He Yue's smile turned into surprise. Fang Hao's goals are quite ambitious. He wants to build a school. Knowledge is now monopolized by the nobility, and the vast majority of commoners are illiterate, knowing very few characters. Those who can count are usually family members who can count or know some simple numbers. The establishment of Fang Hao School can be said to have changed a rule of the modern era. Surprised, he paused in his actions. Wow! The baby in her arms suddenly woke up and burst into tears. He Yue immediately tried it a couple of times, but found it had no effect. All I could say was, "Fang Hao, I'll go over tomorrow morning. The baby's probably hungry, so I'm going back to breastfeed." Fang Hao nodded. "Okay, go ahead." After He Yue left, Fang Hao immediately contacted Li Rong and told her that he would pick her and Amanda up the next day. Make all the necessary preparations. After it's all taken care of, Fang Hao got up and walked towards the hot spring pool in the backyard. Early the next morning, Fang Hao first took He Yue to the villages of the rabbit people and the fox people. In addition to the 135 children, There were also 50 selected young people who learned arithmetic and bookkeeping together. Fang Hao also specially designated a separate area on the periphery of his territory. A separate building was constructed, tables and chairs were made, and paper was prepared. However, there is currently only one teacher, He Yue, and the teaching style is relatively simple. After dealing with He Yue's matter, Fang Hao stood on the open ground in front of Lord's Manor and released a teleportation light screen. The light curtain has just formed. Then they saw Amanda and Bone Dragon walking over first. Next up was Li Rong, who was carrying a shoulder bag and had clearly dressed up carefully. Like a wealthy lady, she stood with her arms crossed, looking around. When you see the stone-paved road with glass covers, there are streetlights lining the entire road. Li Rong was stunned. They even thought they had returned to the modern world. Only when he saw the patrolling skeleton passing by did he realize that he was still in this world and had not returned to the modern world. Only in this way could she be even more surprised. Fang Hao's place is developing so well. Their life here is probably not much worse than in the modern world. If Fang Hao had been just an ordinary person in the modern world before, his life now is much better than before. Amanda, Li Rong, let's come in and talk. The light screen shattered, and Fang Hao invited the two to enter Lord's Manor to chat. Fang Hao's lobby is much more impressive than Li Rong's. Moreover, it's no less impressive than Olivia's residence. Calling it a small palace wouldn't be an exaggeration. Li Rong's eyes widened, yet she felt it was perfectly reasonable. There are streetlights outside, so it's normal for this place to be a bit more luxurious. Because of maids, they were all taken away for intensive training. The place then appeared empty. Fang Hao gestured for the two to sit down and went down into the cellar to get Li Rong a glass of chilled fruit wine. Amanda is a spirit of the dead, so she naturally doesn't need to drink these things. After everything was finished, Fang Hao also sat down to the side. She asked softly, Amanda, is everything all right? Smoothly, I wander around Silverwing City every few days. They're not sure of my purpose yet. By the time they realize what's going on, the battle with the dwarves will probably be over. Amanda said calmly behind her mask. More than half a month has passed since I returned from Silverwing City. For some time now. A few days later, Amanda appeared in Silverwing City and harassed the military. Her bizarre and unpredictable attack methods caused Silverwing City a great deal of trouble. There are records of the gold-eating queen in the church. When they perused the books, they learned that the ruler of the ancient kingdom, the Dark Gold, level undead hero, has reappeared. This impact is no less significant than if the undead army had already reached the outskirts of Silverwing City. The panic in Silverwing City spread rapidly to other cities like a plague. This would essentially postpone the plan to support the dwarves. By the time they realized what was happening, the dwarves had likely already fallen and their territory had been incorporated into Fang Hao's domain. Okay, thank you for your hard work. Fang Hao thought for a moment and continued. How about this? I'll have Nielsen show you around the city so you can get familiar with the surroundings. Amanda remained aloof as always. He didn't speak, but simply nodded slightly. Fang Hao had someone call Nielsen over. Nielsen, who was always busy with research and indifferent to other matters in the territory, accepted the guide job with great respect. Take Amanda with you and wander around the city. Now, the main city has reached level 12, and its size is on par with Lysis. It is important to know that the residential area of Lysis is divided into the commoners area and the nobles area. There are 3 commercial streets. Actually, it's a very large scale. On Fang Hao's side, the area is the same as Lysis City, but the population is not large. Amanda could easily stroll around for quite a while. After Amanda left, only Fang Hao and Li Rong remained in the hall. Before taking her to see rabbit folk and fox people, I also planned to talk to her about cosmetic packaging. They then sent the spirit binding guard outside to call Goldsmith over. Soon, the skeleton goldsmith Luke walked in. At the same time, Luke was carrying a wooden box, which made a jingling sound as he walked. Li Rong had already accepted the fact that he was a ghost, so he wasn't too surprised to see Luke. Instead, I'm curious why Fang Hao summoned this skeleton with various tools hanging from its waist. Good morning, sir. Luke bowed. Okay, Luke, sit over there. Fang Hao introduced. Li Rong, this is the territory's goldsmith. They are all highly skilled craftsmen. I think perhaps we can categorize cosmetics into different grades. Goldsmith? What's so strange about troop type? Li Rong looked curiously at the skeleton opposite her, while Luke nodded in agreement. What do you mean? Li Rong didn't quite understand what Fang Hao was trying to say. Luke, show what you brought to City Lord Li Rong, Fang Hao said. Luke placed the wooden box he was carrying on the table next to Li Rong. Li Rong was curious and took out the items one by one. Firstly, the glassware such as bottles were not made with the same high level of craftsmanship as modern glassware. However, it is a rare item in this day and age. Only alchemists use such bottles to store medicinal liquids. One reason why alchemical potions are so expensive is because they come in glass bottles. Li Rong immediately guessed Fang Hao's meaning and was overjoyed. With glass bottles, she could sell liquid cosmetics. That's right, he has glass plates, so he can definitely produce glass bottles too. Before the joy in her heart had faded, Li Rong picked up the second item, a square wooden box, its surface covered with exquisitely carved metal patterns. Li Rong's eyes widened as she gently stroked the metal covering the outside. To my surprise, it was not only exquisitely carved, but also had smooth, rounded edges that felt soft to the touch. It is in no way inferior to previous modern mechanical processes. That's amazing, truly amazing. At that moment, she knew what Goldsmith did. She took out one item after another. Besides the glass bottles, the rest were all exquisitely carved boxes of various sizes. Some are even directly carved with openwork, the metal sheet as thin as paper, engraved with exquisite patterns. Each one of them can be described as a work of art. Li Rong looked at them one by one for a while. Suppressing her surprise, she said softly, "Fang Hao, do you mean cosmetics should be packaged in this kind of box?" She understood Fang Hao's thoughts. However, such an exquisitely carved box is more of a work of art. Regardless of how much effort Goldsmith put into these products, they shouldn't be used on packaging. They should be kept as collectibles. My idea is to produce a batch of exquisite ones and sell them to wealthy nobles. Those ladies would be very willing to spend their money on these, Fang Hao said, taking a sip of his wine. Li Rong understood what he meant. In fact, the same is true for cosmetics in modern times. There's not much money to be made from raw materials and production. The main focus is still on packaging and brand promotion. With attractive packaging and good advertising, it can be sold for dozens or even more times the price of the product itself. Many consumers are actually well aware of the profits involved, but it still works in the market and the products sell well. The method is acceptable, but can you guarantee a continuous supply of such exquisite craftsmanship? Li Rong said. This is the key point. Fang Hao smiled and nodded. If there's a market, supply won't be a problem. Li Rong was puzzled. Could they really mass-produce like machines? But Fang Hao had given her too many surprises, and since he said he could, she couldn't say much more. He nodded and said, "Since you say it's possible, then I naturally have no objection. You can have someone make 100 sets first, and I'll go and see how the market can accept them. Before we sell them, we can discuss the price." Okay, Fang Hao nodded. Skull goldsmithing. That's a craft honed over centuries. The items produced are indistinguishable from handicrafts. However, within their territory, their effectiveness is quite limited. For a long time, there have only been 101 people who have been making metal buttons or other accessories for the tailor's aristocratic clothing. However, the jewelry produced by Goldsmith failed to gain traction in the market. Luke was also very anxious. There's room for improvement in this area now, and Luke is willing to do so, especially when Li Rong praised the craftsmanship, saying that the items made by their own people were handicrafts. Fang Hao said to Luke, "Luke, do as Li Rong said. Make 100 sets first. If it works well, we can increase the production quantity later." Luke stood up and said respectfully, "Yes, sir. We will do our best to ensure that you and Lord Li Rong are not disappointed." Fang Hao smiled and nodded. "Yes, I believe you." Luke bowed again, picked up the wooden box, and walked straight out of Lord's Manor. After Luke left, Fang Hao also did not forget the purpose of Li Rong's visit today. The villages of the rabbit people and fox people have been established. All that's missing is Li Rong to build the factory. Li Rong, the workers are ready, about 600 in total. You can take charge and see how to set them up, Fang Hao said softly. So many people? Are they all villagers? How strong are they? Li Rong took a sip of fruit wine, in a good mood. Most of them are young people, but there are more than 40 who are a little older. You can let them take charge of cooking, Fang Hao explained. Li Rong smiled and said, "Okay, take me to see it."